can't live by bread alone. Yeah, this word got food in it. Stepping on the devil dome, you should see the bruise in it. Backing out the scripts, told a demon to stand down. Go against the Most High, we gon' see how it pan out. The Father gave me hope, fill me with the ghosts. Now they hate it when I glow. Joseph with the coat, looking for their fruit, but they ain't got no cantaloupe. The Messiah or Belial, you can't be a fan of both. Can't serve two masters. Bread of heaven with the living water, yeah, he's serving up a truth platter. We ain't idolizing no folly, now we setting up a new standard. When Christ touched down, make the whole earth shake like Bruce Banner. Yeah, bringing them troops to ya. End times getting spookier, warfare getting nuclear, mankind getting goofier. They intoxicated with a wine, damn, she done roofie them. I'm checking every word, spirit doctrine like a proofreader. I hate these Nicolatans, hate these graven idols, man, I hate these flipping pagans. Trying to play my father and I hate these imitations. Screaming out Hosanna, we escape that simulation. Better flee to me, vote these or else that lake is where you layin'. Great is he inside of me, casting out this net like I was by the Sea of Galilee. Harvest gon' be plenty, but the laborers are few. Matthew 17 and 20, there ain't nothing we can't do. I can't be no lukewarm, fringes with the blue on. Devil wanna deal, but I told him this ain't Groupon. Praise to the Almighty, you know we gon' sing a new song. Hail the King of King, the ultra low, no Jimmy Neutron. If you keep his laws and his commands, then we can fellowship. I don't get with Pharisees and I don't rock with Hellenists. I ain't praising man, cause only Father get my reverence. I'm swimming in the word, it got me feeling like a yellowfin. Yeah, big stepper, Mr. Demon Chin Checker, trying to hear that well done, cause I feel that displeasure. Father pouring out the wrath, and he got a big measure. If it ain't about the kingdom, then I don't give a six letter. You got faith in the Messiah, you got power. I was clean up in that blood just like a shower. Isaiah 5, you were the vine that came on sour, but now we stand and giving glory in this hour. Yeah, we breaking them curses, fleeing the ways of the serpent. Follow his word and pray for discernment, cause they want us laying in hearses. We gotta rise up, raise and resurface, choose life and stay in your purpose. The price was paid like a merchant, through Christ who came as a servant. See, the kingdom is really the bag, but yet somehow they chasing a Birkin. After this you ain't getting a chance, while you living you can't but search him. Gotta call on his name like his urchin, never knowing that day is emerging. So repent at the weight of perversions, judgment coming, that thing is for certain. Let's go.
All right, Shalawam, Shalawam family. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, all glory, and all honor to the Most High God, whose name is Yahawah. Of course, I do so in the name of his only begotten Son, the Yahawashi, who the world ignorantly called Jesus Christ. It's your brother, Yasharahla. I'm joined by my good brother, Yasharahla. Right? We are here, the house of bread, right? Where we teach that man should not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God, right? We come here to feed our people with the bread of life, the word of God, right, which was embodied as Yahawashi. We're going to dive into the presentation in just a bit. But before we do that, definitely want to put a couple plugs out really quickly. So we are simulcasting here on Yahawah as well as the House of Bread channel. I also want to bring you brothers and sisters' attention to a particular post that I just made here on the channel, right? Give me 1 second. Give me a second. Get this. All right. So again, if you're not subscribed to House of Bread, like I said, we are simulcasting here on House of Bread as well as my channel, Yasharahla. Right. So again, make sure that you guys are subscribed to House of Bread. Right. Link is in the description of the video. Make sure that you are subscribed. In addition, if you're new to the channel, make sure that you're subscribed here as well. Make sure you hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever we go live. Right. Now, I made a post earlier today, right? Just recently, I just created this 3 hours ago, right? If you go to my post section of my page and you click on this link, you can join our broadcast channel, right? So we created a new broadcast channel on Instagram. For anyone that's now on Instagram, make sure you're following the camp at House of Bread Camp, right? Under @ House of Bread Camp. And make sure, of course, you're following myself at LionOfYahawah, right? So if you click on this link, on your phone, it'll take you to Instagram, right? And it'll take you to this broadcast channel, right? I literally just created this about a couple of hours ago, right? So make sure you guys do that so you can stay in tune of upcoming lessons. What I want to start doing also is private lives for people who join the broadcast channel, right? So we'll do Q&As, things of that nature, right? So just want to give more opportunities and more perks for brothers and sisters, just to be able to, again, stay in tune with the camp of what we're doing, get edified. So make sure you join the broadcast channel, all right? Like I said, make sure you subscribe to House of Bread as well. Make sure that you're following us on Instagram. Also, make your way over to HIBofficialZion.com. Get yourself a copy of the Hebrew Israelite Bible, right? The Hebrew Israelite Bible restores the names of persons, places, and things in the ancient Paleo-Hebrew dialect known as the Shalawam Kodash here in the Hebrew Israelite community. So when you read this Bible, you're going to read verbatim Yahawashi. You're going to read verbatim thawadath, which is David. You're going to read verbatim Mashah, which is Moses. Right? You'll read verbatim Yahawah, which is Judah, Yasharahla, which is Israel, right? And you're going to see the Most High God's name in the ancient Paleo text in red all throughout the text, right? So make your way over to HIBofficialZion.com, get you a copy of the Hebrew Israelite Bible today, all right? Additionally, make sure you tap in with me on Instagram and another one of my pages, Gedalia_Ariala, right? So again, here at House of Bread, we teach that man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God, right? There are two different commandments for fringes. Numbers 15 and 38 is different from Deuteronomy chapter 22 and verse 12. Deuteronomy 15 and 38 mentions the ribbon of blue, and that word for fringe is zit, right? So, for instance, if you take a look at, this is a picture of me and the brother Shatar Hanan Yahawashi, right? If you take a look, right, he has a ribbon of blue with these fringes along the border of his shirt, and then he has tassels right here, right? These tassels are known as Gedalium. They're not zit, right? You see I have fringes right here?
Those are zits.
These right here, these tassels, these are Gedalium, right? So you can get your bust down Gedalium from myself here at LionOfYahawah, right? We got tons of different flavors, tons of options, right? And then the brother right here is wearing some tassels from the brother Yasharahla right here, and this is his page, right? Prestige_way_designs, right? So I'm gonna put the links for these in the description as well. Make sure you guys tap in. Different flavors, right? Different ways to, of course, express yourself, and of course keep the commandments of God, right? Mm-hmm. That's what's important, keeping the commandments of the Most High God, right? So you should be wearing both fringes, for the record, right? Anyone teach you that you can wear one or the other, right? What they're doing is they're breaking what Yahawashi said in Matthew chapter 5, right? He said, if you break the least commandments and you teach men so, you shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. I don't want to be in jeopardy of being called least in the kingdom of heaven, right? I can speak for the brother Mayash and say that he doesn't want to do the same, right? Mm-hmm. We all want to be called great in the kingdom of heaven. We want to inherit the kingdom of heaven, right? And we must do so by keeping the commandments, right? Living by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God, right? So make your way over to Instagram. Go ahead.
To that point, right? A lot of us, we come into this knowledge. A lot of us, we've been last in the world, right? You know, we haven't been great in this world, right? At any capacity, right? A lot of us just been in the streets. A lot of us just been regular Israelites in the world, right? So we've been low, you know, and in every um, in every stretch of that imagination when it comes to being low, man. You come into this faith, you should want to be great in the kingdom of heaven. You know?
Yeah, so yes, you can, of course. Yeah, you want to have, so the fringes that I'm assuming that you have on your hoodie, I'm assuming they're ZZ, right? They're the fringes with the ribbon of blue, right? That is different than these fringes, right? So see right here, these are called Gedalion, right? These are different. If you look right here, I'm wearing fringes with a ribbon of blue right here, and I have the Gedalia right here, right? The tassels on the four corners of my vesture, right? We got all tons of flavors, right? So tap in with us, right? Tap in with either myself, Gedalia _ Ariala, or the brother Yasharahla at prestige_way_designs, right? You got tons of flavors. Look at all. Like, come on, like any outfit, any fitted, any snapback, whatever you have, right? The brother gonna be able to get you right. Okay, so make sure you tap in with, like, bro, look, like, come on, how could you not, right? Again, keep stay fly, keep the laws of God, right? So now that we got those out of the way, right? Let's go ahead and let's dive into the presentation. Make sure you brothers and sisters are sharing the video, right? Do your part, share the video, right? Make sure you like, share, subscribe, right? Super chat if it's on your heart, right? These presentations take a very long time, right? This is 96 slides, right? It takes time to put these together, right? So support the ministry and donate to one of the cash apps that you see on the screen, all right? So now, Romans chapter 11, the truth about the grafting in, okay? Now, Hebrew Israelites, a lot of times, what we'll do is we'll utilize certain types of argumentation when having conversations with Christians and Christian Hebrew Christolites alike, right? You know, all the blacks out there, right? And a lot of times, what we'll do is we'll use an argument. Well, you can't graft an orange into an apple, right? You can't graft an apple into an orange, and blah, 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 blah. And that's true, right? And I saw someone make a post this past week on Facebook saying how that's not a good argument because oranges and apples are not part of the same genus, right? And they tried to take that argument and say, well, when you look at the grafting in of the olive tree in Romans chapter 11, Israel's the olive tree, and the Gentiles, the other nations, that the other nations are part of the wild olive that's getting grafted into the natural olive tree, the cultivated olive tree, right? And I told that individual that your argumentation does not work, primarily because the word genus, right, it literally means race. The word genus means race, right? So in this presentation, we're going to of course dive into Paul's epistle, right? We're going to dive into two things that Paul believes in: the law and the prophets, right? And then we're going to also dive into the realm of botany and taxonomy, okay? And I'll explain that as we move forward, right? So before we dive into Romans 11, let's establish some context and some facts, right? So Romans chapter 1, right? To all that be at Rome, beloved of God, called to be saints. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. We know his name to be Hamashiach Yahawashi. So Paul is addressing a group of people at Rome. He's not talking to everyone at Rome. He's talking to the church at Rome who are called saints. Now, the phrase "to be" that's here in brackets is in italics in your KJV. And whenever you read something in your KJV, and if it's in italics, that means that those words don't directly exist in the Hebrew, right? So truly, you could read this sentence, this verse, as to all that be in Rome, beloved of God, called saints. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and from the Lord Jesus Christ and Yahawashi, right? Paul is writing this letter to people described as saints that are loved by God. Fact, right? So as we move along, right, we have to walk down a logical line of a sequential line of logic, right? And we're going to put pins in certain facts and truths, right? Who does the Bible call the saints? LionOfYahawah, if you can read Psalms 50 and 5. You're on mute.
Salakia, Psalm 50 and 5. Right, gather my saints together unto me, those that have made a covenant with me by sacrifice.
So who made a covenant with God by sacrifice? It's the Israelites, right? Let's get Psalms 148 verse 14.
Psalm 148 and verse 14. He also exalteth the horn of his people, the praise of all his saints, even of the children of Israel, a people near unto him. Praise ye Yahawah.
So Yahawah should be praised because he has exalted the horn or the power of his people who are called saints, right? This phrase, even, which is also in italics, this is not in the Hebrew, right? This can be read as he also exalted the horn of his people, the praise of all his saints, the children of Israel, a people near unto him. Praise Yahawah. This is what this means, right? So Paul is addressing a group of people called saints. Only the Israelites are called saints. Here we see the saints have always been the Israelites. Okay. Remember, Paul believes in all things written in the law and in the prophets. Okay. Romans chapter 4. Right. So now we've gone from chapter 1 to chapter 4. All right. Let's read that.
This is Romans 4 verse 1. What shall we say then? That Abraham, our father, as pertaining to the flesh, have found.
Abraham, our father. So the people here, right? Here we see Paul identify that the audience in which he's writing to have Abraham as a physical forefather. Fact. Who is Abraham the father of, right? So I let Jim and I do a quick little family tree of Abraham, right? So you got Abraham, of course you have Sarah, you got Keturah, you got Hagar. From Hagar, you get Ishmael and the Ishmaelites. From Sarah, of course, you get Isaac. And from Isaac, you get Jacob and Esau, right? Esau begets the Edomites. Jacob begets the Israelites, the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. Then you have Keturah. She has these 6 sons, right? So you got Jokshan, you got Midian, Medan, so forth and so forth, right? So Paul's addressing people who have Abraham as a physical forefather. So the only people on the planet Earth that he could be talking to are either the Ishmaelites, the Edomites, the Israelites, or one of these ites from Midian, Medan, Jokshan, and so forth, right? These are the only people that he could be possibly talking to, right? Because these are the only people who are physical descendants of the man named Abraham, okay?
Slakia, to that point, real quick, just think about that, right? Why would he, if he's talking to an audience, right, as we're going to elaborate, if he's talking to an audience, why would he be talking to all of just them, right? As Ishmael, Esau, and Jacob. If he's talking about the beloved of God, right?
Absolutely, right? So with the members of the Church of Rome being physical descendants of Abraham, they could only be of Ishmael, Isaac, or one of the 6 sons of Keturah. That's it. Because Abraham is their physical forefather, right? Romans chapter 9, verse 1. Let's read it in the ESV.
This is Romans 9 and verse 1 in the ESV. I am speaking the truth in Hamashiach. I am not lying. My conscience bears me witness in the Holy Spirit.
Now, real quick, before we continue, the reason why you're going to see me use the ESV in certain locations, the ESV is one of my preferred English translations outside of the KJV, right? Because the ESV is a word for word translation as opposed to a thought for thought translation. An example, the NLT, the New Living Translation, is a thought for thought translation. So the NLT gets things a little twisted a lot of times, right? Sometimes, depending on the verse, it will explain it in a really good way, right? But again, its methodology is called a thought for thought translation or dynamic equivalence. I prefer a word for word translation, and you should too, right? So that's why I'm using the ESV at certain times in this presentation, right? So let's read on verse 2.
Verse 2. That I have great sorrow and unceasing anguish in my heart. For I could wish that I myself were accursed and cut off from Christ for the sake of my brothers, my kinsmen, according to the flesh.
The flesh. Read on.
They are Israelites.
So Paul's brothers, according to the flesh, are Israelites. Paul is an Israelite from the tribe of Benjamin, right? Read on.
And to them belong the adoption.
To the Israelites belong the adoption, right? The adoption comes through Christ shedding his blood for the nation of Israel, right? That him doing that allows us to be called sons of the living God, pursuant to John chapter 1, verses 10 to 11, right? Read on.
To them belong the adoption, the glory, the covenants.
Covenants, plural, both the old, so-called Old and New Covenant.
The giving of the law.
The law was given to the children of Israel.
The worship and the promises.
And the promises. Who are the promises given to? To the forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Read on.
To them belong the patriarchs, and from their race, according to the flesh, is the Hamashiach, who is God over all, blessed forever. Amen.
Right. Verse 6.
Verse 6. But it is not as though the word of God has failed, for not all who are descended from Israel belong to Israel.
Now, I don't necessarily like this particular translation of this particular verse right here. The KJV, I believe, renders it better, right? They're not all Israel that are of Israel, right? And what that means is at the time, you had people who were being called Israel, hence the Herodians, right? You got Herod the Great, Herod Agrippa, right? You got Bernice, right? You got Drusilla, right? She's called a Jewess, but her father, right, is, if I'm not mistaken, is Agrippa, right? Whose father is Herod the Great, and Herod the Great's father is a guy named Antipater the Edomite. So they're calling themselves Israel, but they're not the Israelites. The Herodians ruled Israel, right? But they were not the Israelites. I'm going to be doing a presentation, probably a lesson within the next month or so, about the promises of Abraham, the promises of Isaac, and the promises of Jacob. When we look at the promises of Abraham, and then we get down to the promises of Jacob specifically, it destroys the idea of so-called non-Israelite salvation. It destroys that idea, right? And it goes and it shows exactly what was going on with Edomites, right? When we look at that blessing, it says that Isaac tells Esau that it's going to come to pass that you're going to have the dominion over your brother, but at the end, you're going to have to bow down to him, right? You're going to serve your brother, right? That's part of the promise. Esau was mad about that. And because Esau was mad about that, he wanted to kill Jacob. Obviously, he wasn't able to kill Jacob, but his descendants made good on that anger, right? The book of Sirach said a man shall be known in his children, right? Their children have had a perpetual hatred for the children of Israel, right? And what we're looking at during the time of the Roman occupation, right, in the putting of the Herodians in charge, that is Esau having dominion over Jacob. That's a fulfillment of Genesis chapter 27, right? So let's read on verse 7.
And again, just to reiterate, like this is why we say verse 6, we like the KJV definition or translation better because it's a little more clear. You got to think about contextually with this whole thing. We started off by showing that he's talking about Israelites in the flesh. So if you're reading this in the ESV, you should already think when it says all who are descended from Israel, right? belong to Israel. So not all who descend from Israel belong to Israel. But that doesn't
even make sense. That does not make sense.
Exactly.
Right? How can I be a descendant of Israel and not be a descendant of Israel?
Right.
Does not make sense, right? Either way, right? Let's read verse 7.
And not all are children of Abraham because they are his offspring. But through Isaac shall your offspring be named.
So Abraham has Ishmael. He got Medan, he got Midian, he got Jokshan, he got Ishbak, right? He has these other sons through Keturah. But in Isaac shall his offspring, his true children shall be named, right? Read on.
Verse 8. This means that it is not the children of the flesh who are the children of God, but the children of the promise are counted as offspring.
The children of the promise. Who was the promised child? Isaac. Ishmael was not the promised child, right? The Ishmaelites, not the promised people. Through Isaac, right? And Isaac is the father of two individuals, right? Let's continue. Read on.
Verse 9. For this is what the promise said. About this time next year, I will return, and Sarah shall have a son.
And that son was Isaac, right? Read on. Verse 10.
And not only so, but also when Rebekah had conceived children by one man, our father Isaac.
Our forefather Isaac. Paul saying that these people have Isaac as a physical forefather, right? Read on.
Though they were not yet born and had done nothing, either good or bad, in order that God's purpose of election might continue. Not because of works, but because of him who calls. So
meaning Jacob and Esau, right? One was chosen, the other was rejected before they were born and before they were able to do anything, do any works, whether they were good or evil. So don't a Christian will say, "Oh well, God hated Esau because." No. It's not about, because when you have a conversation with a Christian, they'll say, "Oh, God loves everyone," and then you go to Romans 9 or you go to Malachi 1, which this is quoting, and they'll say, "Oh." They'll move the goalposts, right? At first, I thought God loved everybody. Esau was a man that had a body, so Esau would be included in the phrase everybody. But God hated Esau, and not just Esau, but his descendants forever. God doesn't change, for the record, right? They'll move the goalposts and say, "Oh, God hated Esau because of X, Y, because of what he did." No, Paul's saying not before they were even born, before they were able to do anything good or evil. According to election, because God elected Jacob, elected Israel, right? So before any of that happened, God hated Esau and God loved Israel, right? Read on.
And, you say, it's through election that he hates Esau.
Yeah.
Right? He created Esau to be hated. Right?
Absolutely.
Verse 12, she was told the older will serve the younger. As it is written, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated.
Jacob I loved, Esau I hated. Right? So here we see Paul identifying the same audience as being the children of Isaac. Isaac only fathered Jacob and Esau, who fathered the Israelites and the Edomites respectively. Right? Paul also quotes Malachi 1, where God attests to his love for Jacob / Israel, juxtaposed to his perpetual hatred and indignation of Esau and his descendants. But wait, Paul is addressing a group of people called saints who are loved by God. Again, Romans 1. To all that be in Rome, who are beloved of God, called saints, right? It is easy to see that Paul is writing to Israelites, whether they were Jews who remained in keeping the covenant or Greeks, i.e. Hellenized Israelites who lived after the heathen, as described in the parable of the prodigal son, right? Now, again, if you guys have been rocking with us for a little bit, you should have watched the video on Cornelius, right? We did that how long ago? The Cornelius breakdown was a month ago.
Yeah.
Right? We go into the history, right, of the Jews being Hellenized, right? We go into the Acts 17 breakdown and demonstrate how the Epicurean, many Israelites were Epicureans, how the Sadducees, right, they were their belief in no resurrection, right, comes from the Epicurean school of thought. And the specific poet that Paul was quoting, right, literally was an Israelite who was born in Troy, right? Right. We go into the history of Dardanus. We go into the history of Troy being founded, and the history, as Herodotus lets us know, that Troy was founded by Jews from Crete, right? So the Jews, specifically Judah and Dan, were heavily into maritime trade throughout the Aegean, right, throughout the Greek world, and they set up different colonies in different city-states, right? So this has been a thing for years. Shout out to the brothers of Rongadal Gabarium, right? We've been locked in for a minute now, right? Them brothers, the brother Panah, he just did a video yesterday, right? I'm gonna put the link in the chat in just a bit, right? Actually, let me get it real quick, right? I'm gonna show you guys because man, oh man, ooh wee, right? The brother is going into some major history, right? So even prior to the Greek captivity, right? Jews, Israelites had an influence on the Greek islands already, right? So let me show you real quick. So if you guys are not subscribed to those good brothers, make sure you subscribe to them, right? Rongadal Gabarium. I'm literally an hour and 30 minutes into a 3-hour long video where he's going into some like when I tell you some crazy history, right? Actual sources, not like the other guys who just say things, right? Put things on slides, right? And just have, appeals to emotion, right? And because you like these niggas, right? You just believe it. No, actual sources. And at the end of this presentation, there's going to be sources for everything that I'm bringing out, right? So these brothers did a bang up job, right? An amazing job on going into the hidden history exposed. Did Israelites shape ancient Greek civilization? And the answer is yes. I dive into a lot of these points in the Cornelius breakdown, in the Acts 17 breakdown, right? So I'm gonna put the link in the chat. Make sure you guys you tap in and watch this video. If you truly love studying, if you truly love, right, and seek for knowledge, you should tap into this presentation, right? The scriptures say, don't be ignorant in any small thing, roughly paraphrasing, right? So let's get back into Acts 17, not Acts, Salakia. Get back into Romans chapter 11, right? So again, it's easy to see that Paul's writing to these Israelites, whether they were Jews who remained in keeping of the covenant, or Greeks, i.e. Hellenized Israelites, who lived after the heathen, as described in the parable of the prodigal son. Speaking of the parable of the prodigal son, right, we're going to be doing this presentation. I'm going to be doing a lesson on this next week, right? Next week, Friday, I believe, same time, right? Let me just double check. Watch this. All right, so next week, Lord in Christ. Yeah, so next week, Friday, the 27th at 9 p.m., right? We will be diving into this presentation, right? We'll be diving into the parable of the prodigal son, right? Also, make sure you guys are locked in on this Sunday in a couple of days, because Passover is around the corner, right? We'll be diving into this topic, Deuteronomy 16:5. Should we not keep Passover in America, right? And we're also going to go into the our feast day calendar and more, right? I actually did a poll. Well, yeah, I guess a poll the other day, and I asked brothers and sisters, what were some topics that y'all want edification on, right? And one of them was, my methodology of coming up with our calendar, right? You see right here, right? So again, we're going to be addressing that. So make sure that you guys are tapping in with these posts here on the YouTube page. Also, make sure that you are tapped in with our broadcast channel, right? We just set up a new broadcast channel, as you can see right here, right? We have a new broadcast channel. So make sure that you join the broadcast channel, right? You'll be able to get access to private lives, strictly for people in the broadcast channel, where we'll do Q&As, all types of stuff, right? But yeah, we're going to go dive into that next Friday, right? So the parable of the prodigal son, okay? So that is important in understanding this, right? The concept that there were Israelites who completely were amalgamated to the ways of the heathen, lived amongst the heathen, lived righteous lifestyles, and then came back to the father. The father accepted them with open arms, and the brother that stayed home was jealous. Who's that about? Right? We're going. This ties into this chapter, because Paul talks about provoking them to immolation, right? Provoking people of his flesh, right? His people to having faith in God, right? And in faith in who he sent, which is Hamashiach Yahawashi. So make sure you guys tap in next Friday, same time, 9 p.m., as we dive into the parable of the prodigal son, right? So again, Paul's audience in Rome, they're called saints in Romans 1:7, right? Israelites are the only people ever called saints. They're loved by God. They're descendants of Abraham. They're descendants of Isaac. Isaac is a forefather of Jacob and Esau. Esau is hated. Jacob is loved. Conclusion: the Church of Rome are Israelites. I don't understand how anyone can come to any other conclusion laying out those facts, right? So let's continue. Now let's explore Romans 11. Let's get Romans 11 from verse 1.
We're still in the ESV?
No, I'm in the KJV now.
This is Romans 11:1. I say then, have God cast away his people? God forbid. For I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham.
Of the seed of Abraham. Remember, Paul said that just because you're of the seed of Abraham doesn't mean that you're a child. But in Isaac shall thy seed be called. Right? Read on.
Of the tribe of Benjamin. God have not cast away his people, which he foreknew.
Which he foreknew. Who did God foreknow? He foreknew the Israelites. Read on.
What ye not what the scriptures say in Elias, how he maketh intercession to God against Israel, saying, Lord, they have killed thy prophets and digged down thine altars, and I am left alone, and they seek my life.
So again, why is he saying this? Because just how they killed the prophets of old, they also killed Yahawashi. We literally delivered Yahawashi, who the world called Jesus Christ, over to the Romans to be killed for no reason. Pilate said, I see no cause to kill this guy. But as a custom, I'll let you guys decide. You can either take Barabbas or you can take this guy, right? Barabbas, mind you, was in prison for murdering someone. And the Israelites chose the murderer over Yahawashi, who did no sin. Neither was God found in his mouth, right? So this is why Paul is attesting to this, right? Read on.
Okay. Again, verse 3. The Lord, they have killed thy prophets and digged down thine altars, and I am left alone, and they seek my life. Verse
4.
4. But what saith the answer of God unto them? I have reserved to myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to the image of Baal. Even so, then at this present time, also there is a remnant according to the election of grace.
Even at this time, right? Again, this is how analogies work. Even so, right? When Christ says that just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, so that whosoever believes on him shall have eternal life. Well, who was the whosoever in the wilderness that received healing? It was the children of Israel, right? Verse 5.
Verse 5. Even so, then at this present time, also there is a remnant according to the election of grace.
Come on.
And if by grace, then is it no more of works. Otherwise, grace is no more grace. But if it be of works, then then is it no more grace. Otherwise, works is no more work.
So again, here's the thing. When we even go back to Romans 8, right, 28, right? Paul says all things work together for the good of them that love God, according to the foreknowledge, right, that the Most High had, right? Him who he foreknew, he also predestinated to be conformed to the image of his Son, right? To be conformed means to be changed to the image of the Son. What is the Son's image, right? 1 Peter 2:21 and 22, right? Walking in the path of God and being faithful in keeping the commandments and not living after sin. That's the image of Christ. Okay. So to be conformed to that image means that you were not doing that. You had to be changed to that. Right. That's why we teach that, hey, we got to keep the commandments. Right. Whether or not, let's say back 2,000 years ago, you were a Jew in the land of Judea, right, in Galilee, right, and you were Hebrews, and you were. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because guess what? Even the Jews in Judea, in what's called Jewry, were breaking the commandments. We're not following the commandments properly, right? The Pharisees were upholding, extolling the precepts of men, the commandments of men. They were doing all this stuff, and they were disregarding the commandments in certain aspects, and Christ was getting on them. So it didn't matter about works, because again, Paul is addressing Judaizers. Those are the Pharisees who believed, that were, of course, coming after the brothers who are coming back to the faith, saying that they can't be saved if they're not circumcised and things of that nature. That's all important in understanding what Paul is addressing to this church at Rome, right? So again, it's not about works, it's through the grace, but that does not mean that we continue in sin, right? He says that in Romans 3:31, he established the law, even though we have faith. Faith is actually part of the law. Christ says that in Matthew 23:23, right? In Romans 6:1, he says, shall we continue in grace that continue in sin that grace may abound? God forbid. How can we that are dead to sin live any longer therein? Right? So just to not misconstrue what Paul is saying, right? So who is the elect or election? Here we have Israel being called the elect. Isaiah 45:4, right? It says, for Jacob my servant's sake, and Israel mine elect, I have called thee by thy name. I have surnamed thee, though thou hast not known me. Right? 1 John 2:3 lets us know that hereby we know that we know God if we keep his commandments. Right? So when it says, even though you have not known me, it means that even though you haven't been keeping my commandments, guess what? You're still my elect. Right? Isaiah 65:9. And I will bring forth a seed out of Jacob and out of Judah, an inheritor of my mountain, and mine elect shall inherit it, and my servant shall dwell there. Israel, Isaiah 65:22. And they shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. Why is that? Oh, plants, right? We're talking about the grafting in of an olive tree. One of the plants that's abundant in the land of Israel is the green olive tree, right? They shall not plant and another eat. As the days of a tree are the days of my people and mine elect. Right? So his people, the children of Israel, that's the elect. It says, shall long enjoy the work of their hands. Right? Romans, so again, coming back to the election, right? It's Israel. Right? Verse 7.
Consulaki, and just to that point, and we, if you dig into that word, right, even elect, right, it's basically interchangeable with chosen. So it's like majority of the time you see chosen, you can substitute elect, and we see that referred, like you said, it's referred to Israel all every time,
all throughout the scriptures.
Okay. Verse 7. What then? Israel have not obtained that which he seeketh for, but the election have obtained it, and the rest were blinded.
Okay, so we got to unpack this verse right here. It says, what then? Israel have not obtained what he seeketh for, but the election hath obtained it. Well, Israel is the elect, but not all of Israel, right, is going to actually obtain this, because when we look at the scriptures, Isaiah 6:9, it says, who has believed our report, right? Most High God says, make the heart of this people fat, that they may not see with their eyes and understand. They may not hear with their ears and perceive, right? So that they won't be healed. God, everyone is not going to get chosen, right? It says, and the rest were blinded. The rest of what? The rest of the elect. They were blinded because God said, hey, go and send this report, right? Go tell the people. The Most High God did this with the prophets of old, right? Send the prophets to the people, tell them to, hey, turn back to the Most High God, stop breaking God's commandments. And what did niggas do? Niggas did not listen, right? They continued to sin, and the Most High God had to bring that BTA. Simple, right? It says the rest were blinded. The rest of what? The rest of the election was blinded, right? Read verse 8.
Verse 8. According as it is written, God have given them the spirit of slumber, eyes that they should not see, and ears that they should not hear, unto this day.
Unto this day. What is he quoting? Isaiah 6, right? Verse 8. Also, I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Then said I, here am I, send me. And he said, go and tell this people, hear ye indeed, but understand not. See ye indeed, but perceive not. Make the heart of this people fat, and make their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and convert and be healed. Again, we talked about Romans 8, right? God predestined some to be conformed to the image of Christ. So when it says us, that's the Son in heaven with the Father, right? In Isaiah 6, there's a seraphim that comes and takes a coal from the altar, puts it on Isaiah's mouth, right? It says, thy iniquity is purged, right? That seraphim serves the Most High God. Christ is that seraphim that did that took away the iniquity of Isaiah in Isaiah chapter 6. And when it says, who's going to go for us? And Isaiah said, send me, Lord. Right? Funny story. Not necessarily a funny story, but funny enough, I went to a Catholic high school. Right? I was born and raised in the Baptist church. Right? I went to a Catholic high school, and I was a part of different organizations at my school. Right? My school was what's known as a LaSallian school. Right? So-called St. John Baptist de La Salle. Right? That was the tradition of Catholic schools that my school was part of. And we had this thing called the LaSallian Summer Youth Assembly. Right? So I'm at this convention, essentially, this retreat with a bunch of kids from different Catholic schools all over the country, right? For instance, here in Philadelphia, there's a school called West Catholic. No, Roman Catholic. It's on Broad Street, on Broad and Vine, right? That's a LaSallian school, right? I met a brother who went to that school there, right? And the year that I went, we had T-shirts, and the slogan, right, was in Isaiah chapter 6, right? Whom shall I send, right? Or who will go for us? Then said I, here am I, send me, right? Because that was a whole theme of that particular retreat. And it's funny enough that fast forward, that was like 2009. Here we are in 2026. That's 17 years later, right? I'm like, hey, send me, right? Brothers of our of the same cloth, right? We go out to the highways and hedges and we bid our people to the marriage, right? We're trying to follow in the same footsteps of Isaiah and of Jeremiah and of Ezekiel and Daniel and all the prophets of old, right? We're trying to follow in their footsteps, all right, and warning our people that, hey, if you don't get right with the Most High God, right, bad things are going to happen. So this is important, right? This is what Paul is quoting here in Romans 11, right? Let's continue. Verse 9.
And the Bible also says, like, there's no new thing under the sun, right? This is something we also seen in Ezekiel when he told him, go in chapter 3, when he said, go, I send you to prophesy to the children of Israel. And then right after that, he says, but and they will not hearken unto you.
Yep, because they won't hearken unto me.
Right. So like this is a recurring thing. So it's not like it's something new, some new understanding that, you know, we're trying to interpolate or force into the word, right? It's clear and evident.
Let's
Again,
get
verse
these.
9.
Make sure it's let's get these likes up, right? And let's make sure we share the video. Share this, because this is edification that the nation needs, right? While you got other niggas over here putting on capes, trying to save people that hate us, right? For truly for money purposes. Let's just keep it a buck, right? We're here doing edification, right? So share this video.
Oh, real quick, and as you say that, right? There's something I sent to myself I want to play so bad, right?
No. They took it to a whole.
There was this professor, right? Listen to what he had to say, right? You brothers need to take notes.
Drive us insane.
Because he went in, right, over slavery, right? And just talk about how these are insane people, right? And how for years we tried to fix these people, right? We tried to let them know, look, you're wrong, right? You guys, you need to look at us as humans, right? You need to treat us, well. And not only that, y'all need to fix yourselves up, right? But this is the conclusion he came to, right?
Conclusion as a 70-year-old black man living in America.
Right. You can hear it?
Yeah.
Y'all need to get therapy.
Every time the white people.
Black people alone and not let your insanity drive us insane. Because that's what you're trying to do. So I have come to the conclusion as a 70-year-old black man living in America, we cannot fix white people. We haven't been able to fix.
What the Bible say, who can make straight what the Lord made crooked?
Listen, the scriptures say we would have healed Babylon, but Babylon can't be healed, right? And the Edomites are the daughter of the Chaldeans here in Babylon, here in America. There's no fixing these people, right? But you got niggas trying to save them, right? Paul was not trying to save those people, right? Paul was trying to save his people, right? So let's continue.
Verse 9. And David saith, let their table be made a snare and a trap and a stumbling block and a recompense unto them. Let their eyes be darkened, that they may not see, and bow down their back alway. I say then, how they stumbled that they should fall? God forbid. But rather through their fall, salvation is come unto the Gentiles, for to provoke them to jealousy.
To provoke them to jealousy, right? Again, Yahawashi gave a parable about the prodigal son. The younger son went and lived amongst the heathen, lived as the heathen, was deemed a heathen, came back, was accepted by the father, and the son that stayed home, the brother that stayed home, was what? He was jealous, right? So Deuteronomy 33 and 21 says, they have moved me to jealousy that which 32 and 21, right? They have moved me to jealousy with that which is not God. They have provoked me to anger with their vanities. I will move them to jealousy with those which are not a people. I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation, right? The Bible literally calls Ephraim a silly dove. A silly dove, right? The northern, which represents the northern kingdom. Silly, right? Isaiah 7 and 8. For the head of Syria is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. And within 65 years shall Ephraim be broken, that it is not a people.
That it what?
That it is not a people, right? We have Hosea chapter 1, verses 6 to 11, right? Let's read that.
Hosea 1 and verse 6. And she conceived again and bare a daughter. And God said unto him, call her name LaYAHAWah.
LaYAHAWah.
For I will not.
Which means no mercy. LaYAHAWah, which means mercy, no mercy.
For I will no more have mercy upon the house of Israel, but I will utterly take them away. I will have mercy upon the house of Judah.
But I will have mercy on who?
The house of Judah.
Now, Paul quotes Hosea chapter 1, right? Verses 10 through 11 in Romans chapter 9. Talking about the Gentiles, right? Within this church coming to know Christ. Let's continue.
Again, verse 7. But I will have mercy upon the house of Judah and will save them by the Lord their God, and will not save them by bow or nor by sword, nor by battle, by horses, nor by horsemen.
Uh-huh.
And just a sidebar, that's a cut to them heathens, right? The Revelation 29ers, as they're
Yeah.
being called, right? Because that's exactly how they claim,
trying to defend themselves.
right? Verse 8. Now, when she had weaned laYAHAWah, she conceived and bare a son.
Uh-huh.
Then said God, call his name Lo-Ami,
laYAHWAH, right? Read on.
for ye are not my people.
For ye are not my people. So God was not going to have mercy on the northern kingdom, and God was going to call them not his people. Right? Read on.
And I will not be your God. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it is said unto them, ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living God.
So God said, yeah, I'm not gonna be your God, you're not gonna make my people for now. But it's going to come to pass when after you multiply, you're gonna be brought back and you're gonna be called my people again. Right? Read on.
Verse 11. Then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together and appoint themselves one head, and they shall come up out of the land, for great shall be the day of Jezreel.
Jezreel, right? Yasharahla, which means he is sown of Yahawah. So, what do you sow? You sow seeds, right? We see Israel, we see the Most High God using all these agrarian terms for the children of Israel, for the seed of Israel, right? That's important as we continue in this analogy that Paul is talking about, which is the grafting in of this olive tree, right? Verse 12.
Verse 12. Now, if the fall of them be the riches of the world, and the diminishing of them the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their fullness?
How much more their fullness? So the world. Pay attention. Read on.
For I speak to you, Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostles of the Gentiles, I magnify my office. If by any means I may provoke to emulation them which are my flesh, and might save some of them.
So now, what a black is going to do, right? A bootlicking ass coon Christian Israelite, right? What he's going to do is say, oh well, the Paul's flesh are the Israelites, and the Gentiles that he's talking about, they're not his flesh. Well, according to the law, which Paul believes in, right? If you're uncircumcised, you're what? You're cut off from the people. You're cut off from the people. So you're not deemed as being part of the people. But that reconciliation, that redemption comes through, right? The sacrifice that Yahawashi made, right? Which according to prophecy was for the sins of my people Israel. So again, Israelites, whether or not they were circumcised on the 8th day or not, right? They have an opportunity to come back through what Christ did, right? Now, I wasn't circumcised on the 8th day, right? Were you circumcised on the 8th day of your birth?
I couldn't.
No, right? If you were circumcised when if you were born, if you're a male, you were born, right? You're more likely getting circumcised within that first or second day. They're gonna shoot you up with a vitamin K shot, and they're gonna circumcise you, right? All praise to the Most High God. I had the opportunity to. I just had a son, right? Guess what? He was circumcised on the 8th day, right? I made it a point because it's not up to him to get circumcised on the 8th day. It's up to me as his father to get him circumcised on the 8th day. So is it the fault of these brothers who were not circumcised? No, it's their parents' fault that they were not circumcised, because a baby can't circumcise himself, right? So this is what we got to understand, right? When we're diving into Paul's epistles. Again, Paul is a doctor of the law, right? Paul believes in all things written in the law and the prophets. So if you don't understand the law and the prophets, right, very basic fundamental things in the law and the prophets, you're not going to understand Paul's epistles. Peter even tells you that there's things in Paul's epistles that are hard to be understood. Let's continue.
Verse 15. For if the casting away of them be the reconciliation of the world,
So the
reconciling
casting away of them, of some of them, be the reconciling of the world. Right? Pay attention. Read on.
what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead?
Life from the dead. Right? So let's look at the word reconcile. The word reconcile means to restore to union, friendship after estrangement or variance. We were at variance with God because we were walking contrary to him. Leviticus 26 says, if you will walk contrary to me, I will walk contrary to you. Right? Christ, through the sacrifice that he made, reconciled us back to the Father, right? Restoring that friendship, right? So that's what the word reconcile means, right? It goes directly from Latin reconciliare, to bring together again, regain, win over again. Who does God need to win over again? Who's God going to bring together again? He's going to bring together the children of Israel, right? Because the children of Israel were separated, right? You had the northern kingdom, you had the southern kingdom, right? There was that split. That split came through the sins of Solomon. Solomon oppressed the northern kingdom, and when Rehoboam was risen up in his stead, they said, "Listen, just lighten the yoke." And he said, "Nah, I'm gonna be worse than my dad." And then we see the split, right? So that reconciliation comes through Hamashiach Yahawashi, who says, "A greater Solomon is here." Let's continue, right? So who is the world? Isaiah 45:15. Let's bring it out.
Isaiah 45:15. Verily, thou art a God that hides himself. Verily, thou art a God that hides himself, thyself, a God of Israel, the Savior.
The God of Israel, the Savior. The God of Israel is Israel's Savior, right? Read on.
They shall be ashamed and also confounded, all of them. They shall go to confusion together that are makers of idols.
What was Israel? So in this context, right? He's talking about the few verses up. It talks about, I believe, the Sabians and another heathen nation, right? They're makers of idols. They're going to be ashamed and confounded, right? We've been ashamed and confounded because we've been following these people, right? But again, God's going to save us, going to reconcile us, going to deliver us, right? He's going to reconcile the world. This world is Israel, right? Read on. Verse 17.
Verse 17. But Israel shall be saved in Yahawaah with an everlasting salvation. He shall not be ashamed nor confounded, world without end.
So Israel is a world without end. This is the reconciliation, the reconciling of the world. Guess what, guys? Paul knows this scripture. Paul believed in this scripture. He believed in all things written in the law and the prophets, right? Paul used to debate Jews in the synagogue, right? Going into the prophets to show how Christ, how Hamashiach Yahawashi was indeed the Messiah, right? Wisdom of Solomon chapter 18 verse 24 says, for in the long garment was the whole world, and in the 4 rows of stones was the glory of the fathers graven, and thy majesty upon the diadem of his head. Talking about the high priest regalia, right? He would wear an ephod. Would have those 4 rows of stones. Those rows have 3 stones per 12 stones for the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. That's the whole world. Israel's the world, right? John 18:20. Jesus answered him and said, I speak only to the world. I ever taught in the synagogue and in the temple, whither the Jews always resort, and in secret I have said nothing. So the world is Israel, and the reconciling of that world is Israel being rejoined to the Most High through Christ's sacrifice. Christ says he spoke to the world by teaching the Jews in the temple and the synagogues. However, he had another fold that he hadn't directly spoken to. John 10:16. And the other sheep I have, which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice. And there shall be one fold and one shepherd. Christ is the good shepherd, right? Let's read Ezekiel 37:24.
Ezekiel 37 verse 24. And David, my servant, shall be king over them, and they all shall have one shepherd.
So Ezekiel 37, all right, Ezekiel's told to take a plank of wood, write the name of Judah and his companions, right, to the other plank of wood, right, Ephraim and his companions, right, and put them together. And this is symbolic of Christ coming, that one shepherd coming and reconciling and bringing the people back together. There's going to be one shepherd. Christ said that there's others of this fold. Who's of this other fold? The lost sheep of the house of Israel. Right? Read on.
Con, they shall also walk in my judgments and observe my statutes and do them.
So when this happens is when the new covenant is enacted, right? We are not under the new covenant, right? Because we're still teaching, right? The laws of God are not written in our inward parts. The laws of God being written in our inward parts will enable us to walk in God's judgments and do them perfectly without fail, without going to the left or to the right.
Con,
Read on.
you know, like in the time of Adam before they
Went off.
Con, and they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Jacob my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt, and they shall dwell therein, even they and their children and their children's children forever. And my servant David shall be their prince forever.
Right, this is Christ. It's Hamashiach Yahawashi, right? For a silly ass OT only to say, oh, this is actually going to be King David. Well, when Rehoboam, right, made that silly decision that I'm going to be worse than Solomon, right? They said, away to your tents, Israel. What part do we have in David? Called Rehoboam David, right? So again, this just means the Davidic Messiah, all right? So that other fold was the Jews / Israelites that were separated from the fold, which he told his disciples to go to, the lost sheep of the house of Israel, right? Now, who are the lost sheep of the house of Israel? Let's read Jeremiah 50:4.
Con, Jeremiah 50:4. In those days and in that time, saith Yahawah, the children of Israel shall come, they and the children of Judah together.
Together. They were separated. Now they're going to come together. Read.
Going and weeping, and they shall go and seek Yahawaah their God. They shall ask the way to Zion with their faces thitherward, saying, come and let us join ourselves to Yahawaah in a perpetual covenant that shall not be forgotten.
What's this perpetual covenant? It's Slaki, hold on. What's that perpetual covenant? That perpetual covenant, right, is the same covenant that's called the covenant of peace in Ezekiel 37, right? The same covenant that's going to be enacted in the wilderness, according to Ezekiel chapter 20, right? That same covenant that's described as the new or refreshed covenant in Jeremiah chapter 31, right? And reiterated in Hebrews chapter 8. That's the new covenant, which is only for the children of Israel and the children of Judah, right? Read on.
My people have been lost sheep.
My people have been what?
Lost sheep.
Lost sheep. Read.
Their shepherds have caused them to go astray. They have turned them away on the mountains. They have gone from mountain to hill. They have forgotten their resting place. Right.
So the Most High God Yahawah, he's our resting place. Right. We forgot him. Right. But we're going to be brought back to him.
Salaki, and that makes me think of John 4:22, where she was like, our fathers worshipped in this mountain, right? Talking about Samaria, she's not referring to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Right. Why? Because again, you know, the northern kingdom, you know, it's you know, you can make an educated guess that this sister was a northern kingdom sister, right?
Yep.
And they were shunned by Judah.
Yep.
Right.
So that separation, that middle wall partition.
Come.
Matthew 10:5. Let's bring it out.
Matthew 10:5. These 12 Yahawashi sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not.
So the slow down, right? So in this context, he's talking about the non-Israelites, the heathen, right? Don't go into the way of the other nations, right? And in the cities of the Samaritans, right, you had what? A bunch of heathen living there. Of course, you had Israelites living there as well, right? You had Southern Kingdom living there because Christ is from Galilee, which is the cities of the Northern Kingdom, right? Capernaum, all these places, right? But then you also had Syrians and you had Greeks and you had all types of heathen, right, living in the northern parts of Israel, right? When we go back to 2 Kings right? The Assyrians brought in men from Hamath and from Babylon and from other places and put them in the land of Samaria. So some of these Samaritans were heathens. Some of these Samaritans were actually Israelites, right? So he said, don't go to them, but go what?
But go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Uh-huh.
And as ye go, preach, saying, and Salakia, right? Even that right there is reaffirming your point, because he's saying he's separating the house of Israel from Gentiles, right? And like you said, your point, city of Samaritans. So obviously he's saying the lost sheep, he's saying go to my people, not necessarily.
And that's what he went to in John chapter 4. Right. He went to that. He saw an Israelite woman. She said, our father Jacob gave us this well.
Exactly.
Right. So she's an Israelite. Right. So he knew who to go. They saw him, and then after and in that story, right, they go into her town, right, and all the people that was living with her, right, they learned from Yahawashi and the disciples, right? So again, the lost sheep of the house of Israel, specifically, go to them and preach what?
And as you go, preach, saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand.
The kingdom of heaven, right, is the children of Israel ruling all nations with Christ, pursuant to Daniel chapter 7 and verse 13 and 18, right? Daniel chapter 2 and verse 44, Micah chapter 4 and verse 8, right, through 13. And it tells the other nations getting stomped out, right? Getting BTA. Why would he go? Why would his disciples go into, hey, you know what? Guess what? The kingdom of heaven is coming, right? And we're gonna enslave y'all niggas.
Right.
Why would he send them to do that? That doesn't make sense, right? That's why when we go out to the highways and hedges, right, it's more important that we engage with our people than banging on Esau, right? Listen, Esau, go up the block. That's not for you, right? We're sent to our people, to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, right? You look at the Great Commission. Christians always talk about the Great Commission. Christ said, do what I told you to do, right? Go to all nations. Yes. Why? Because the children of Israel are spread and scattered amongst all nations. And tell them what I've taught you, roughly paraphrasing. And what did Christ teach his disciples? To go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Don't go to the non-Israelites. Don't go to them. Go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Right? Matthew 15:24 in the ESV. He answered and said, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Point blank, period. Simple. Right? So let's go back to Romans 11. Right? Let's read.
Romans 11, verse 15. For if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is also holy. And if the root be holy, so are the branches. So
let's slow down. Let's unpack this, right? I know the average Black, Hispanic, and Native American has never planted a seed, has never cultivated a plant, has never reaped harvest, right? A lot of us don't know about this. Most of us live in cities, right? Most of us have we have fallen completely from our culture, right? The Israelites had an agrarian culture. Our feast days are centered around harvests. I understand why niggas who's never planted anything in their life don't understand Romans 11, right? So what is Paul saying here, right? The casting of them away and the reconciling of the world, right? This is being likened unto what? More agrarian terms. The first fruit. If the first fruit be holy, right? The feast of first fruits is about our wheat harvest, right? Our barley harvest, right? Our grain, right? Just so you guys understand, wheat, grain, that's fruit. That's the fruit of the plant, right? We think fruit as being sweet things, right? That fruit, those wheat berries, they get harvested, they get threshed, the chaff gets separated from the wheat. It's called winnowing, right? And then those wheat berries get grinded at a mill and turned into what? To flour to make what? Bread, right? This lump, right? You take that flour, you add water, right? And you mix it together. Let it sit for a while. The natural yeast start to eat at it and leavens it, So that lump is just mixed dough. So if the first fruit be holy, the lump be holy. And then he's liking that agrarian concept to, if the root be holy, then so are the branches. Who's the root? The forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They are the root, right? We are the branches, right? Verse 17.
Verse 17. And if some of the branches be broken off, and thou, being a wild olive tree, were grafted in among them, and with them partakest of the root and the fatness of the olive tree. Boast not against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee.
So here's the thing, right? We're going to dive into how grafting actually works, right? It says the branches were broken off, right? It says thou being a wild olive tree, right? It says that you're wild by nature, right? We're going to go into how the species known as the olive tree, how it is simply just a domesticated or cultivated wild olive, right? So this is where it starts to get really good, family. Right, so who did the Bible call an olive tree? Psalms 52 and 8, right? This is David. If I'm not mistaken, I believe this is when Doeg went and snitched on David to Saul, right? So this is David, right? It says, but I am like a green olive tree in the house of God. I trust in the mercy of God forever and ever. I will praise thee forever because thou hast done it, and I will wait on thy name. For it is good before thy saints. We already said who the saints are, right? David saying he's like an olive tree in the house of God, right? The house of God is being likened unto the saints. We are the house of God, right? The children of Israel, right? Jeremiah 11 and 16. Let's bring it out.
Jeremiah 11 and 16. Yahweh called thy name a green olive tree.
Yahweh called thy name a green olive tree. Read on.
Fair and of goodly fruit.
Beautiful and of good fruit.
With the noise of a great tumult, he have kindled fire upon it. And the branches of it are broken. The
branches of this olive tree that God's talking to Israel, he's calling Israel an olive tree. The branches of it are broken. Read on. Again, this is in the prophets that Paul believes in.
Right.
Read.
All the language he's been speaking. Right. For Yahawah of hosts that planted thee have pronounced evil against thee. For the evil of the house of Israel and of the house of Judah, which they have done against themselves to provoke me to anger and offering incense unto Baal.
You see that? Right. So again, it's talking about Israel and Judah, right? Brother Ivan Alvarez, the YAHAWAH, YAHAWAH, shanyam-ishar for your super chat, King. Much appreciated. Right. So now let's continue, right? So biblically, men are likened unto trees individually, but more importantly, trees represent families or nations. Right? Let's explore that. Here we have Ezekiel chapter 31. Verse 3, he says, behold, the Assyrian is a cedar in Lebanon with fair branches, right? The Assyrian is a nation, a Shemitic nation, right? The Assyrians, of course, came against the children of Israel. They also came against the Judah, right? We have something called the Lachish reliefs, right? Hezekiah, right? Of course, he was in his walled city, right, in Jerusalem, and the Assyrians tried to come against Jerusalem, but the Most High God sent the angel to smite them dead, right? And Sennacherib went back home to Assyria and got killed by his sons, right? The Assyrians called it cedar in Lebanon, right? Verse 9 says, I had made him fear by the multitude of his branches, so that all the trees of Eden that were in the garden of God envied him. So the Garden of Eden is talking about the Fertile Crescent. We have different nations. These nations are represented by different species of trees. The Assyrian being called a cedar in Lebanon, right? Verse 16, I have made the nations to shake at the sound of his fall. right? Because the Most High God cut down the cedar, the great cedar of Lebanon, the Assyrians. He made the nations to shake at the sound of his fall when I cast him down to hell with them that descend into the pit. And all the trees of Edom, the choice and best of Lebanon, all that drink water shall be comforted in the nether parts of the earth. Right? So these other trees, these other nations are likened unto other species of trees. They're rejoicing because the Most High God cut down the Assyrians, which is likened unto a cedar tree. Right? Isaiah chapter 14, verse 6. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger, is persecuted and none hindereth. Right? This is a parable against the king of Babylon. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yea, the fir trees. Right? Now the ESV says, yea, the cypress trees. Right? This word that's for fir tree, it means cypress tree. Right? It's translated as cypress tree in other translations. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee in the cedars of Lebanon. These are talking about people. These are talking about nations, saying, since thou art laid down, no fellers come against us. What is a feller? A feller is someone who chops trees. Right? Verse 9, hell from beneath is moved for thee, to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. I have raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? So this is about the king of Babylon, right? It's not talking about the ancient Babylonians. It's talking about the kings of modern day Babylon, right? The Edomites, right? The bright and shining one, right? Lucifer, right? The one who is the epitome of light and everything good. If it ain't white, it ain't right. That's the world we live in, right? We live in a world of white supremacy. When the Most High God strikes down Babylon, the great America, all the nations which are being called trees, cypress trees, they're going to rejoice and say, are you become weak like us? Because the Edomites are going into what? Captivity. This is what Isaiah 14 is going into, right? When these niggas tell you that Isaiah 14 and 1 and 2, you got some of you that are cleaving and they're going to be none of that was happening, right? They don't know what they're talking about. Khan. It's all good out. Shalawam.
Shalawam, Yasharahla. And be in the chat.
All praise to the Most High. Let me go ahead and switch this. All praises, right? So this is what this is going into, right? So let's continue. So we see the Assyrian nation being called cedars, and other nations being called fir or cypress trees. Clearly, these are different species, right? Let's dive into the realm of botany and taxonomy. This is where it starts to get really good, family. So pay attention. No, daughter of Babylon is in reference to it's a reference to the Edomites, right? What's that? Psalms 137. It says, remember the Edomites in the day of Babylon, right? Isaiah 47 and 1 goes into this. Plethora of places go into the Edomites being the daughter of Babylon, right? So let's continue. Taxonomy. Taxonomy, from the Greek word taxis, which means arrangement, and nomia, which means method, right? It's the scientific study of naming, defining, and classifying groups of biological organisms based on shared characteristics, right? So real quick, right? When we take a look at domain, right? See, when I was in school, we really didn't dive into domain too much, right? We learned about, of course, binomial nomenclature, right? So for instance, a dog is known as canine lupus, canine being the genus and lupus being the species, right? That's a wolf, if I'm not mistaken, right? Canine lupus, right? Canine, like a wolf is the same genus as a fox, is the same genus as a pit bull, is the same genus as a what's the face, as a poodle, right? And guess what? They can all mix. They can all breed with each other because they're part of the same genus, right? We're going to dive into what the word genus means in just a bit, right? This is where it starts to get real good, right? So this is taxonomy, right? Now, domain specifically, right? Domain goes into whether or not you are what's called a eukaryote or bacteria, things of that nature, right? So domain is the highest, most inclusive taxonomic rank in biological classification, placed above the kingdom level. It was introduced by Carl Wiose in 1990, right? It categorizes all life into three primary groups: bacteria, archaea, and eukarya, based on fundamental differences in cellular structure and genetic makeup. Key aspects of domains: three domains of life. Bacteria are single-celled prokaryotic organisms, including common bacteria. Archaea, single-celled microorganisms that, while prokaryotic, differ from bacteria in biochemistry and genetic makeup. And then you have eukarya, which are organisms with complex cells containing nucleus and membrane-bound organelles, including animals, plants, fungi, and protists. Okay, so this is what taxonomy is. This is what this goes into, right? Pay attention. So here we have three different trees. We got the Assyrian. He is called what? A cedar, right? We have the other nations being called a cypress or a what? A fir tree. And then, of course, we see Israel is called an olive tree. Now, if we take a look, right? Take a look at the kingdom, right? Actually, let me make this a little bit bigger. No, let's not go with that one. That's not what I want. All right, that's fine, right? So I just want to make it a little bit bigger so you can see, right? So you see the kingdom plant, right? The phylum, right? The phylum for actually the phylum for olives is different than the phylum for cedars and cypress, right? Then we have class, it's a completely different class, right? We have different orders, right? Cypress and cedars, they are the same order. They're of the Pinnalis family, right? Pine trees are a part of this order, right? Then you have the family, Pinaceae for the cedar, and then we have the cypress family, or Cupressaceae. I can't pronounce that, that's Latin, right? Then you have the genus, which is the Cedrus true, right? Or true cedar. And then you have for the cypress, it's the, again, true cypress trees, right? Of course, for the olive, we have the genus Olea. And then on the species level, the cedar in Lebanon is called a Cedrus labani. Labani simply is Lebanon, right? And then for the cypress is known as Cypressus sempervirens. And then the species for the olive is called Olea europaea, right? Now, if you see these two names on the species level, that's called binomial nomenclature. Binomial, two name naming convention. That's what it means, right? Let's continue. So let's look at the word genus. The word genus, Latin plural genera, right? It means kind or class or things, right? We go on to late Latin. Latin says genus, race, stock, kind, family, birth, descent, origin, right? From Jenny, give birth, beget. So we were begotten of who? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We are a race, common stock, a family. That's what the word genus means. Okay? Very important. All praise to the Most High. So let's go back to here, right? As you can see, the cedar, cypress, and olive tree are not even in the same order, right? Truly not even in the same phylum. It says of plants. They are separated from the olive tree by order, family, genus, and of course, species. It is impossible to graft branches of a cedar or cypress into olive trees. Impossible, right? Again, we go back. We see that again. We're actually not even part of the same phylum. We're part of flowering plants. I don't even think, I'm not sure if their phylum actually produces flowers, right? So again, I think like the cypress produces a pine cone, right? Cones, right? That's what the cypress produces, cones, right? It's not even a flowering plant. So there's no way to graft a cypress into a olive. The other nations are called fir or cypress trees, right? The Assyrian specifically is called a cedar tree. They're in the same phylum, and they're actually not too far that far related. They have a similar range, right? So again, let's continue, right? So here we have the olives. Its species is Olea europaea, right? Which means European olive. Is a species of subtropic evergreen tree in the family of Olaceae, abundant throughout the Mediterranean basin. Wild species in Africa and Western Asia. So you have wild species in Africa and in Western Asia. What's Western Asia? Asia Minor, Anatolia, right? Troy, the Troad, Cilicia, right? Lycia, all these places that we read about in the New Testament, right, that we went into in our Acts 17 breakdown, that we went into in our Cornelius breakdown, these are where wild olive species, that's some of their range, right? The olive tree is the type species, right? It is the type species, right? It is the type species of its genus, Olea, and it lends to the name Olaceae. So what is a type species? A type species is the specific name-bearing species that acts as the permanent reference point for the genus or subgenus in biological classification. It defines the genus's identity, ensuring the name remains attached to that group even if it is reclassified. When a new genus is named, a type species is assigned to serve as the representative. Okay, so the Olea europaea is the type species of the Olea family, right? Or the Olea genus, right? So let's continue, right? Watch this. Actually, let me go ahead and pull up this video for us, right? And watch this, family, right? There's just a bunch of annoying music in the background, right? But just pay attention. How to graft olive. Right. So here's a graft. That's clay that they're removing from it, right? So what's the one thing that's important to understand is that the roots is what brings the water to the leaves. The leaves is what captures the sunlight, which is important in what? Photosynthesis. Without water and without light, plants cannot grow. They cannot live without photosynthesis. This is how they eat, right? Plants need water and they need sunlight. Photosynthesis. The root brings the water, the plant brings the light energy. They work together to create energy for the plant to grow, especially for the fruit to grow. Right? I know a lot of you niggas who love to say the heathen, right? You didn't graduate high school, right? Some of you didn't graduate. So a lot of you niggas didn't graduate college or even go to college, right? And you didn't pay attention to school, right? So I'm sure some of y'all, the ones that love the heathen, sure y'all didn't pay attention in school in biology class, okay? Right? This is how biology works, okay? Now, grafting is a particular technique to increase yield of fruit from a tree. So what we see him doing is he's cutting the rootstock, right? So essentially he's cutting a branch. Now he's splitting the rootstock. So you cut the branch and then you leave that rootstock and you split the rootstock, okay? Now what he's going to do, he is preparing the scion. Pay attention to the word scion. This branch is a scion. Right? He's preparing. Now notice how he's cutting it. He's cutting it. Right? In order for you to get grafted, if you're a branch, right? You're a scion, right? If you want to get grafted back into the family, right? Get back grafted into that rootstock, you got to get cut. What cuts you? The word of God, right? Hebrews 4 lets us know that Yahawashi is the word of God, and the word of God is sharper than any two-edged sword. So you got to get cut, right? You got to cut some of the excess off, right? That's what's happening. You're preparing the scion, right? Watch it. Prepare the scion. So he's cutting it. And now he's adjoining it, right? He fits the scion into the rootstock. And just so you know, this is done in the springtime, right? This is done in the springtime where the bark, it's tons of sap, right? Tons of sap available, which is important for the plant to heal, right? There needs to be sap that heals the plant when it's cut, right? So it's done in the springtime, right? Why is that important? Yahawashi died for the nation of Israel in the springtime during the feast of Passover. Important, right? Let's continue. He's the word of God. He's who cuts you. Now there's moist clay that's applied, right? We see all throughout the scriptures. Oh, take clay or take balm, right? To as a mollifying ointment, right? You would take clay for healing things, right? Same thing for this grafting process, mending the scion with the rootstock. And we're going to dive into what the word scion means, right? At the top of it too. Now he's going to wrap it, right? He's going to cover it to keep it moist. Now, obviously, we didn't have plastic back in the day, so I'm not sure what we would have used, but we would have wrapped it with something, right? And we would have had to maintain and make sure that this graft takes, because we want to increase our fruit yield, right? Just so you guys know, according to the law, right, when you go into the land, the fruit trees, you can't eat other fruit trees in the third year, right? Trees typically don't produce fruit until about 3 years, 3 to 5 years, typically, right? The first, in the third year, the fruit is deemed as uncircumcised. You don't eat it. In the fourth year, it's dedicated unto the Lord. And in the fifth year, you can freely eat of that fruit. So why would we be grafting things, right? We would graft. So once we get trees that are of an age that where we can actually eat of it, we're gonna start grafting so we can increase our fruit. Very important, right? Very practical. So that's it, right? So let's dive back into the presentation, right? So we went over this. So again, the grafting process, again, it's typically done in the springtime. You cut the branch, leaving behind the rootstock. You split the rootstock. You prepare the scion. You fit the scion into the rootstock. You apply moist clay, and you cover the mend. Simple. That's how grafting works. What does the word scion mean? It means what? Descendant. Descendant. Child. Especially a descendant of a wealthy, aristocratic, or influential family. I'm not sure if you guys read the Bible, but the Bible says that Abraham was rich in men servants and maid servants and cattle and gold and silver, right? The scion, which is the branch that's being grafted in, is a descendant. It's a child, especially of a descendant of a wealthy, aristocratic, or influential family. Who's more influential than Abraham? From Abraham, right, you get Islam, you get so-called Christianity, you get so-called Judaism, and you get the proper way, right? Which is what Hebrew Israelites, what we've been teaching here in Babylon, right? That we are the Israelites, that we have to keep the commandments of God and faith in who the world calls Jesus Christ, right? This is the influence of Abraham. It means heir. This is what the word scion means. It's not a coincidence. Going into the etymology, scion, a shoot or twig, especially one for grafting, right? From old French scion, descendant, shoot, twig, offspring. The scion is an offspring of what? Of the rootstock, right? So let's continue. So you have olive trees in their grafting, they're very selective, right? Compared to apples and citrus and stone fruit, olives have narrow graft compatibility due to vascular alignment requirements, biological compatibility, and evolutionary distance, right? And when I'm saying evolution, I'm not talking about apes turning into human beings. Evolution is literally how living organisms adapt to their environment, right? If you take two identical twins who have the same DNA and you separate them at birth, right, and you expose them to different environments, they're going to actually look different. This has been studied, right? So this is evolution, right, in that sense. So vascular alignment requirements, right? Watch this, family. Here's where it gets good. For a graft to succeed, the cambium layers, which is the thin growth tissue under the bark, must align and grow together. Different Olea species, again, Olea being the genus, can have different cambium thicknesses, different growth rates, different wood densities. Even if a graft initially takes, mismatched growth can later cause swelling at the graft union, poor nutrient flow, delayed failure, sometimes years later. Okay? All the sources for this information is at the end of the presentation, right? This presentation, I'm going to put the link into the description at the end of this video, right? So you can download it and you can go through all of my sources, right? And you can have this presentation, right? Again, biochemical compatibility. Olives produce phenolic compounds or defensive chemicals in the wood and sap, right? Again, the sap is heavily and abundantly available in the springtime. This is when it's the optimal time to do a graft, right? If two species differ too much chemically, the graft union forms callus tissue. Vascular connection never fully stabilizes. This is why some grafts survive a season or two, but fail later. Then you have evolutionary distance. The Olea genus spread across Africa, Asia, and Australasia, right? So that's like Australia, the Pacific, right? Mediterranean olives evolved separately from many African and Pacific species, so genetic divergence limits compatibility because they have different environments, okay? Different types of nutrients, pH, all types of stuff, right? Different types of soil. If any of you guys garden, right, you understand pH is important in soil, right? The amount of sunlight a particular one plant might get, another plant may not need that much light, and vice versa. There's a lot of different factors that go into producing a hardy crop, right? So now let's go into the hierarchy of practical grafting compatibility, right? I'm going to start with tier 3. Right, tier 3 has poor or unreliable compatibility, usually not recommended. Olea africana in most trials, Olea capensis, Olea paniculata, Olea woodiana, Olea lancea. Typical outcome: graft takes initially, fails after several seasons. Right. Tier 2, moderately compatible. Grafts may succeed but require testing. Olea cuspidata, Olea fruginea. Some African wild olives form closely related to Europea, right? Possible issues: uneven vigor, slower union development, occasional delayed incompatibility, right? Occasional delayed incompatibility. Here's tier 1. Fully compatible. These behave almost as the same species. You have Olea Europea, which is the olive that we're talking about, the common olive, in all cultivated varieties. And then you have Olea Europea var silvestris, or the wild olive. Wild olives are known as Olectors. You have long-term stability, normal growth and fruiting, and this is used worldwide. This is the standard for grafting olives, right? Olive oil is a big industry, right? This is the standard for olive growers, okay? They use any variety of Olea europaea, right? And then they also use the wild olive. Has long-term stability and has normal growth and fruiting and is used worldwide. Why would it be used worldwide? Because it has normal growth and fruiting. That's what you want. You want it to produce what? Fruit. Very simple to understand. Oh, Salaki, I was on the wrong slide, right? So here, let me actually make this larger for you guys, right? So again, right, we went into the biochemical compatibility, right? Vascular alignment requirements, evolutionary distance, right? Now we're looking at the tiers of compatibility for practically grafting Olea europaea, which is the common olive or the Mediterranean olive, the olive that you would have in Israel, right? Right here, again, this is the presentation. You'll be able to download this, all right? So what does the Torah say about mixing of different kinds of plants and seeds? Again, like we said, Paul believes in all things written in the law and the prophets, right? So let's look at what the law, we looked at the prophets. The prophets call Israel an olive tree, calls the Syrian a cedar, called the other nation cypress trees. Those cannot get grafted into Olea europaea, which is the green olive, the Mediterranean olive, right? Leviticus 19:19. Ye shall keep my statutes. Thou shalt not let thy cattle gender with diverse kind, meaning you don't have your horse and your donkey mate to get a mule. If you do that, what happens? They become sterile, right? They cannot reproduce. Okay. Thou shalt not sow thy field with mingled seed. And another note, right? Yahawashi rode in on a donkey, right? On an ass, not on a mule, because that would be an abomination, right? It says, thou shalt not sow thy field with mingled seed. Thou shalt not sow thy field with mingled seed, neither shall a garment mingle with linen and woolen come upon thee. Deuteronomy 22:9. Thou shalt not sow thy vineyard with diverse seeds, lest the fruit of thy seed which thou hast sown and the fruit of thy vineyard be defiled. It would be a defiling thing, right? To mingle seed, right? To take a branch of another genus or species of olive, right? And of plant, and try to graft it into an olive tree. It's impossible. It's literally impossible. Yeah, you can graft, right, all types of apples and all types of citrus, right? How we get oranges? Oranges come from if I'm not mistaken, all right, the grafting or the mending of lemons with pomelos or something like that, right? Or I think the mandarin and the pomelo. This is how you get an orange, right? A lot of the fruits that we have today have been hybridized, right? Have been created through selective breeding, right? Through the intervention of human beings. This is how it works. But when it comes to olives, they have a very narrow compatibility window, right? Even with the species within its genus. Okay? So again, we don't want to defile the fruit. Okay? So Paul, who believes in the law, right? Believes in the law and the prophets, would not make an agricultural analogy to heathen, i.e., diverse seeds, being mingled with the holy seed of Israel. Simple. It's very simple, family. But again, like Peter said, right? Even here on to where you call. That's not the one I'm looking for. Right? He talks about Paul's epistles, right? He talks about how Paul wrote about a lot of these things that he was writing to the strangers in Cappadocia, Bithynia, and all these areas, right? He said, in which there are things that are hard to be understood, which those who are unlearned and unstable wrest, meaning they twist. They twist what Paul is saying because they're unlearned in what the law and the prophets. The law and the prophets is the foundation of Paul's writings. So again, Paul would not be making an analogy of mixing heathen, i.e. diverse seeds, into the holy seed of Israel. No, right? Romans chapter 9. Neither because they are the seed of Abraham are they all children, but in Isaac shall thy seed be called. That is, they which are the children of the flesh, they are not the children of God, but the children of the promise are counted for the seed. The children of the promise come through Isaac, and of Isaac's descendants, God only loves Israel. He hates Esau. And Paul wrote this letter to people called saints that are loved by God, who have Abraham and Isaac as forefathers. So you think something just changed magically, right? When we cross the threshold of Romans 10 and into Romans 11, that makes no sense. Romans chapter 11, verse 15. For if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, again, we already defined who the world is. The world is Israel. What shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? For if the first fruit be holy, the lump is holy. And if the root be holy, so are the branches. And if some of the branches be broken off, and thou being a wild olive tree were grafted in among them, and with them partakers in the root of the fatness of the olive tree, boast not against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. Right? So now, this is where things get even better. So we have olives, the common olive, right? Olea europaea. And we have the wild olive, right? Again, same kingdom, same phylum, same class, same order, same family, same genus. The word genus means race. And then we have the species Olea europaea. And the species of wild olive is called Olea europaea subspecies Olaster. The wild olive family is a subspecies of the common Mediterranean olive. Very simple, right? And this is what has a high normal graft rate, right? It's very easy to graft a wild olive into a cultivated olive, right? Here's where things get even better, right? So I asked Google, right? Did my Googles, right? Do the knowledge. A lot of you niggas just be talking around your mouth. Let's do some knowledge. Do the knowledge, right? How did wild olives spread from the common olive, right? AI overview says wild olives or olasters, Olea europaea subspecies sylvestris, spread from the common domesticated olive. So the olive, right? The regular olive, Olea europaea, is the domesticated olive, primarily through bird-mediated seed dispersal. Bird-mediated seed dispersal. Ooh, man, the Most High God is amazing. And, ooh, this is about to get cold. Watch this. Of cultivated fruits, cultivated, and the abandonment of managed groves. The abandonment of managed groves, causing the trees to revert to a wild-like or feral state. While wild olives are the ancestors of cultivated ones, modern wild populations in many regions are often considered feral or admixed forms that have reverted to a thorny, small-fruited state after escaping cultivation. So the Most High God cultivated this green olive tree, right? Cultivated these olives in this olive grove, right? But because they wanted to mix and mingle with it all over the place, this is where we see the breaking of the branches, right? So again, bird-mediated seed dispersal. So you have avian dispersion, okay, which is birds, right? Frugivorous birds consume the fruit of the olive trees, disperse the seeds over long distances. This is particularly effective in areas where cultivated olives are abandoned, allowing for the reestablishment of new feral and wild type populations. Genetic hybridization, right? Wild and cultivated olives are fully interferal. When cultivated trees cross with existing wild populations, olasters, they produce hybrid offspring that can thrive in the wild, often resulting in a secondary wild population. Fertilization. Cultivated olives, if left unmanaged, oh my God, this is just amazing, right? If left unmanaged, can revert to a wild type characterized by smaller fruit and thornier branches. These plants can grow from the seed of cultivated olives. Let's read that again. These plants can grow from the seed of cultivated olives. Then, of course, you have human activity. While not a natural spread, humans have historically moved cultivated olive trees across the Mediterranean, providing the base for subsequent natural dispersal, right? So let's go to the next slide, right? We have, right? Let's go to Isaiah chapter 5 in the ESV. Watch this, family. Let me sing for my beloved, my love song concerning his vineyard. My beloved had a vineyard on a very fertile hill. He dug it and cleared it of stones and planted it with choice vines, right? Here we see the Most High God using all types of agrarian analogies for the people of Israel, right? He planted it with choice vines, selected vines. Guys, this is how, like, you don't have strawberries the way that they are today without husbandmen selecting the best plants and planting them and mating them, right? Because wild strawberries are smaller and they're white and less sweet, right? Same thing with other types of plants, right? It's called cultivation, right? Different subspecies are called cultivars and things of that nature, right? Let's continue. He goes on to say, he dug it, he cleared it of stones and planted it with choice vines. He built a watchtower in the midst of it and hewed out a wine fat in it. And he looked for it to yield grapes, but it yielded wild grapes. Sounds familiar. And now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and the men of Judah, judge between me and my vineyard. What more was there to do for my vineyard that I have done in it? When I looked for it to yield grapes, why did it yield wild grapes? And now I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will remove its hedge, and it shall be devoured. I will break down its walls, and it shall be trampled down. I will make it a waste, and it shall be not be pruned or hoed, and briars and thorns shall grow up. I will also command the clouds that they rain no rain upon it. For the vineyard of Yahawah of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah are his pleasant planting. And he looked for justice, but behold, bloodshed, for righteousness, but behold, an outcry. Right? So again, the children of Israel and the children of Judah are being likened unto a vineyard, right? That the Most High God cultivated with choice vines, right? To produce beautiful, sweet grapes, right? You literally would not have sweet grapes if you just let wild grapes grow, because wild grapes are going to produce sour grapes, right? Cultivars, cultivation, right? This is what it means to be a husbandman, right? You have to cultivate the soil, right? You got to cultivate your woman, right? You got to plant seed. You got to cultivate your children. You got to prune your children. You got to correct your children, right? These are all analogies that the Most High God is using for us, the nation of Israel, right? And we have to take these same practical examples that we see in agriculture and apply it to our lives, right? It gets better, right? Jeremiah chapter 2 in the ESV verse 20. For long ago I broke your yoke and burst your bonds, but you said, I will not serve. Yes, you on every hill and under every green tree, you bow down like a whore. So we see the Most High God rebuking Israel through the prophet Jeremiah. So that we were on every hill, every green tree. We were following what every other nation. The word green just means, alive, virulent, right? We were under every green tree, which represents these other nations. We bowed down like a whore and followed them and their gods. Right, verse 21. Yet I planted you a choice vine, wholly a pure seed. How have you turned? How then have you turned degenerate and become a wild vine? How have we become wild? Right? Jeremiah chapter 12. Now, this is right after Jeremiah chapter 11, right? Where we see God calling Israel a wild a green olive tree, right? And then he will break off our branches, right? Jeremiah chapter 12 and verse 7. I have forsaken my home, my house. I have left mine heritage. I have given the daily beloved of my soul into the hand of her enemies. My heritage is unto me as a lion in the forest. It cried out against me. Therefore, I hated it. My heritage is unto me as a speckled bird. We just talked about how the wild olive, how the cultivated olive, its ancestor is the wild olive, right? And it can revert back into a wild state through avian dispersal, avian distribution. The birds come eat the fruit, right? They go fly away and they poop out the seeds, and the seeds fall what? On other soil in other lands. Interesting. Tell me more. My heritage unto me like a speckled bird. The birds round about her are against her. Come ye, assemble all the beasts of the field, come to devour. The Most High God bringing all these nations to who? To do what? Devour the nation of Israel. Very simple to understand, right? Again, Isaiah 8:20 says, to the law and to the testimony. If they speak not according to this word, it is because there's no light in them. There's no light in anybody teaching you that Romans 11 is about heathen being grafted into Israel, because the law will prohibit that, all right? And biology prohibits that. The analogy wouldn't even make sense if that's what they're saying, right? Again, this is right after Jeremiah 11, where he talks about us being a green olive tree and how our branches will be broken, right? And we will be devoured because of what? Us following the ways of the other nations, right? Bowing down to them like a whore, right? Worshiping their gods, right? So the Most High, he cultivated Israel from a wild state in Egypt, right? When we were in Egypt, we were worshiping the gods of the Egyptians, right? When you truly look at the root stock, right, which would be Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? The scriptures tell us that Abraham kept my laws, my statutes, and my commandments, right? In the prayer of Manasseh, says, listen, repentance is for evil people, sinners like myself, right? Unlike Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who have not sinned, who have not broken your commandments, right? We look at Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob honored his parents, did not marry Canaanites, went and got a wife from his mom's folks, right? Isaac, right? See Isaac being righteous. Of course, the scripture said that Abraham was righteous, right? That he followed the Most High God's law, statutes, commandments. Then when you get to Jacob's kids, you got Reuben, wild boy. What does this nigga do? He sleeps with his dad's concubine. You got Simeon and Levi, right? What do? Right? They go against Pop's wishes, right? Go and kill a bunch of niggas, right? Because one nigga slept with their sister, right? And caused our father Jacob's name to stink in the land, right? Meanwhile, we're strangers in that land, right? You got Judah. Judah goes and marries a Canaanite. Jacob didn't marry a Canaanite, right? We were told to stay away from the Canaanites. Judah goes and marries a Canaanite, right? Has Onan, right? Gets a wife, Tamar, another Canaanite, right? Lord killed him. Onan comes in to raise up seed unto his brother, levirate marriage in the law. Pulls out, throws the seed on the ground. Lord killed him, right? And then Judah says, after his wife dies, he's in the city, right? Going to share sheep. He sees what he thinks is a prostitute, a zanah, a whore, propositions her, pays her, sleeps with her, whole time not knowing it's his daughter-in-law that he was supposed to give to his youngest son, Shalawam, according to the law. That's wicked. Our forefathers literally threw Joseph in a ditch, sold him into slavery. So the children of Israel are wild by nature. So again, we have the Most High. He cultivated Israel from a wild state out of Egypt, right? Planted us in the fertile land of Israel and cultivated us to be a holy seed or cultivar for the purpose of producing good fruit, right? According to the law, we're supposed to teach the laws to our children, and our children are supposed to teach it to their children, so forth and so forth, producing what? Good fruit. We did not do that. Due to us mingling with the other nations, right? What was that term that it said, right? Let's go back to that term, right? Generic hybridization. That's what we did, right? We just hybridizing the ways of the heathen, bringing them onto ourselves, start practicing them, not following the laws of the Most High God, right? That's what happened, right? So the Most High, again, he removed his hedge of protection, right? Because we were mingling with the other nations. He broke our branches, sent the birds of the other nations to eat our fruit and scatter our seed, the children in other lands. They devoured our children, right? Killed our children, right? In this analogy, ate our children and then flew away, shat us out, shitted on us, shat our seed all over the place, right? And then we grew up what, right? We would further follow their ways, becoming even more wild. This is the analogy that's being shown all throughout the scriptures. But somehow Paul comes along and people are saying that, oh yeah, he's saying, yeah, you can graft in the other nations. Listen, the reason why the Most High God broke the branches in the first place is because we're following the other nations. So now it makes sense that he's bringing the other nations into our fold, into our tree. That doesn't make sense, family. And if you have the Spirit of God, right? If you actually love God and you keep his commandments, and you have eyes to see and ears to hear, in a unfat heart to perceive, you'll understand this. This is practical. What's been being taught to us through the lens of Christianity is not practical, right? Let's continue. Romans 11:19. Thou wilt say then, the branches were broken off, that I might be grafted in. Well, because of unbelief, they were broken off. And thou standest by faith. Be not high-minded, but fear. Salakia. For if God spare not the natural branches, take heed, lest he spare not thee. Behold, therefore, the goodness of the severity of God on them which fell severity, but toward thee goodness, if thou continue in his goodness. Otherwise, thou also shalt be cut off. Meaning, when these brothers who were living amongst the heathen, right, they're being brought back, they're being walking with open arms. The big brother some of the big brother that stayed home and was keeping the commandments, they got jealous, right? They're mad about it. They have an ability most of God has the ability to change their heart, right? To change their minds, right? To allow them to see, take the veil off their eyes, right? He's telling them, don't be high-minded against them, right? And you have to continue in the goodness, right? You have to come back home, and now you got to follow God's commandments. This is what this is going into, right? Verse 23. And they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again, right? The scriptures say it is impossible to please God without faith, right? The book of Deuteronomy 32 says that this is the people without faith, right? And this is why faith is harped on throughout the so-called New Testament, right? In the Gospels, right? Faith is important. It is impossible to please God without faith, right? Verse 24. For if thou were cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, right? Because again, laYAHAWAH, right, is a cultivated olive tree, right? Put in a grove, right? With a hedge, right? It gets pruned. It gets, the land gets hoed. It gets water. It gets nourished, right? It's a cultivated olive tree, right? It descends from what? The wild olive tree, right? Were grafted contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much more shall these, which be the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree, right? Verse 25. For I would not, brethren, that ye be ignorant, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits, right? Here's where this is the conclusion, right? That blindness in part is happening to Israel. in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles we come in, right? Who are these Gentiles? Again, we've gone into this in the Acts 17 breakdown, in the Cornelius breakdown, right? Israelites who were uncircumcised, who made themselves uncircumcised, who went and followed the ways of the heathen, right? And did not live as Israelites. According to the law, they're cut off from the people. And they're deemed, if you're cut off from Israel, then what are you? Yeah, you're still a physical descendant of Israel, but you're not considered Israel. You're not part of the commonwealth of Israel. So you're considered what? A Gentile. Again, I go into this all the time, John 5:58, John 8 and 58, right? Where will he go that we cannot find him? Will he go to the dispersed amongst the Gentiles, the Greeks, and teach the Gentiles, the Greeks, right? We were calling our brothers, physical brothers, who were following Greco customs, we were calling them Greek. And when you truly know the history of the Bronze Age collapse, right? The Israelites are a Bronze Age people, right? We literally make our exodus during what becomes the Bronze Age collapse. The superpower in the region at the time, where you had the Hittites up north in Anatolia, right? In part of Syria. Then you had the Egyptians in Egypt, right? They were the kings. Canaan was the kings of Canaan were simply basically governors and mayors, right? They answered to Egypt, right? And with our Exodus, Pharaoh's army, right? And just so you guys know, the Pharaoh of the Exodus is more than likely Amenhotep II of the 18th dynasty, right? Well, I'll be doing a lesson on the Pharaoh of the Exodus within the next couple of months. That's a presentation that's going to take a very long time, right, to put together, right? So after that happens, we're wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. Pharaoh's army is decimated, right? And then you have all this turmoil, right? Then we come into the land of Canaan, right? We're conquering. We have something called the Armana letters. The Canaanites are writing to Pharaoh saying, hey, send us some archers, send us help, right? Help us, right? We got these these Hebrews, right? They're taking everything, right? Then you also have, at that time, you have the Sea Peoples, right? Again, shout out to the good brothers at Ramgadal Gabarium, right? I think I put that in the chat earlier today, right? They actually went into some of the history of the Sea Peoples and how Israelite tribes influenced, cultivated culture in the Aegean Islands, in Greece, right? They were following heathen ways, mainly Judah and Dan, right? You also had Asher involved, right? You had Asher, right? You had Issachar, right? They were following the ways of the heathen, right? They were engaged in commerce and trade all throughout the Aegean, right? We went into all this stuff, right? So again, this has been happening. This even happened before Hellenization. You go back to the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, we see where we make a pact to cast out our children and their mothers, because you had a bunch of brothers marrying heathen and allowing their children to be raised in the ways of the nations, of the heathens. And we cast them out. So you've had this middle wall of partition. You've had this separation of the children of Israel for millennia, for centuries, right? Going back as far as the Bronze Age collapse, right? We got the Sea Peoples, a whole bunch of stuff, right? Very important to understand, right? So here's where all this comes to a conclusion, right? Romans 11, verse 25. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits. That blindness in part, again, we talked about that blindness in Isaiah 6, right? It's happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. And so all Israel shall be saved. That is, as it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob. For this is the covenant unto them, when I shall take away their sins. What covenant is this? The new covenant, the same covenant that Paul says belongs to the children of Israel. The conclusion of everything that he's been talking about, right? At the end of the day, all Israel is going to be saved, right? When the Gentiles, the exiled Israelites, get brought back and grafted back into the Commonwealth of Israel, right? And even some of those who at that time, right, may not have believed in Yahawashi and have been broken off, they may come back too, right? And at the end of the day, where you lie on that field, on what side you on, whether you're gonna bow down to the king, right? If you're gonna honor the king, right? If you're gonna follow the king, at the end of the day, through the cycle of regeneration, all Israel's gonna be saved. This is the conclusion of all this analogy, all this talk that Paul is expressing here in the epistle to the Romans, who are called saints, who he says have Abraham as a physical forefather, Isaac as a physical forefather, and that are loved of God, which are only the Israelites that descend from Isaac, right? So again, what is he quoting? He's quoting Isaiah 59. And the Redeemer shall come to Zion, and to them that turn from transgression in Jacob, saith Yahweh. As for me, this is my covenant with them, with Jacob, saith Yahweh. My spirit that is upon thee, and my words which I have put in thy mouth shall not depart out of thy mouth, nor out of the mouth of thy seed, nor out of the mouth of thy seed, saith Yahweh, from henceforth and forever. Well, who's the them? Again, it's Israel. Right, Isaiah 59:1. Behold, the Yahweh's hand is not shortened that it cannot save, neither his ear heavy that it cannot hear. Right, but your iniquities have separated between you and your God, and your sins have hid his face from thee. He will not hear. For your hands are defiled with blood, and your fingers with iniquity. Your lips have spoken lies. Your tongue have muttered perverseness. Right, it's talking about Israel. Right now, it says, "Behold, Yahweh's hand." Right, Isaiah 6 talks about even Isaiah 6, Isaiah 59. Right, where else? Other places in Isaiah says, "Whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed?" To whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? The arm of the Lord is Hamashiach Yahawashi. Last time I checked, your arm, an extension of your arm, is your hand. Yahawashi is that hand that the Most High God is extending to save who? The children of Israel. Like, come on. Come on. It's simple, family, right? Romans 11:25, right? Again, all Israel shall be saved, for there shall come out of Zion the deliverer. And he's coming to deliver who? Israel, as we just read, right? So, conclusion. The Bible calls Israel a green olive tree, Jeremiah 11:16. David calls himself a green olive tree, Psalm 2:8. Other nations or families are likened unto other types of trees. The Assyrians are cedars, in Ezekiel 31. The fir trees or the cypress trees are other nations, Ezekiel 31, as well as Isaiah 14:8. The law prohibits the mixing of different seeds in a field. Paul addresses the church at Rome as being saints who are loved of God, Romans 1:7, right? The saints are the Israelites pursuant to Psalms 50:5 and 148:14, right? Paul describes this church at Rome as being physical descendants of Abraham in Romans 4 and verse 1, and as physical descendants of Isaac in Romans 9:10. Israel is the olive tree. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are the root stocks. The broken branches equal Israel, right? Or those that don't follow, right? The Messiah, who don't follow the word of God. The scions, i.e. branches being grafted, again, are Israel, because the word scion means heir, descendant, or child. Simple, right? And then here are all the sources, right? So you guys can get all these sources. Actually, let me go ahead and make sure. Let me share. Boom. Link. Boom. Right. I'm gonna go ahead, family, and I am going to put this in the description. All right, it should be in the description right now. All right, all praise to the Most High. Right, put a 1 in the chat if that makes sense. Right, if there's anything that you guys want me to clarify, let me know. Put a 2 in the chat if you need some clarification, and I'll maybe another 10-15 minutes possibly for questions. Possibly for questions. All praise to the Most High, Sister Teresa, Sister Tessa, Hadassah. Appreciate you, sister. And the water for so that you send some cash apps to water, sister. So he says, just for context sake, can you explain the verse 25 until the fullness of the Gentiles come in, and or similar or differences from Luke 21-24 times of the Gentiles be fulfilled, right? Gotcha, right? So what Christ is talking about in Luke 21-24 of the time of the Gentiles being fulfilled, right? Actually, let's go to the scriptures really quickly. Let me pull it up. Luke. Good question. Luke 21. Because a nigga that loves the heathen will try to play a game, right? So let's go ahead. Right. So Luke 21-24, right? Right. So let's look at the context, right? So Luke 21 and verse 5, right? And this lines up with Matthew 24. It says, and some spake of the temple and how it was adorned with goodly stones and gifts. And he said, all as for these things which ye behold, that days will come, in the which there shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Right? Again, you see Matthew 24. This is what it's referring to, right? So he's being asked about something very specific, right? And they asked him, saying, Master, but when shall these things be? And what sign will there be when these things shall come to pass? And he said, take heed that ye be not deceived. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ. And the time draweth near. Go ye not therefore after them. Right. So again, they're asking about the times of the end. Right. So it's lines with Matthew 24 as well as Matthew 13. Right. Now let's jump down to they also ask about his return. Right. His return is different from the things of the stones of the temple being destroyed. That is about 70 AD specifically. Right. So when we get down here to, let's go to Luke 21-20. It says, and when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies. When did that happen? Right. The first Jewish Roman wars, which happened from 67 to 73 AD. Then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. When you see Jerusalem compassed about armies, know that its desolation, its destruction is near. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains. Right. So if you're outside of Jerusalem and you see these armies come against Jerusalem, you need to flee. Right. And let them which are in the midst of it depart out. Right. If you're in Jerusalem, you see them, get out. And let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Right. Again, this is a fulfillment of Daniel chapter 9. Right. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. For there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword. Who's they? The Israelites shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled. What are the time of the Gentiles being fulfilled? Daniel chapter 2, right? Daniel chapter 2 and verse 44, as well as Daniel 7, right? Daniel 2, right? The king's dream, right? He has this image, right? Different metals that represent different kingdoms. You got the Babylonians, the Medo-Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, right? And of course, the revised Roman Empire, right? Jumping down to verse, right? So we got The interpretation: Babylon, the first kingdom, Persia and Greece, right? Rome, and then it goes on to say the divine kingdom, right? So when we see, right, verse 43 talks about the iron mixed with the clay, right? This is that revised Roman Empire, right, which we're currently in, right? We're in this time right here. And this is what we're waiting for, verse 44 to come to pass. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. That's when that happens, it's the time of the Gentiles being fulfilled, right? But it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Right now, this differs from Romans chapter 11, or Romans in general, because these Gentiles that Paul is writing to, right, these are Israelites, right? These are Israelites who have been Hellenized, right, over the courses of centuries at this time. And again, like I said, it actually doesn't even start during the rise of the Macedonians, right, and Alexander the Great and Antiochus the Epiphanes, right? It starts before that, because you had Dan and Judah and a bunch of other tribes literally going into these Aegean islands in Greece, right, in Asia Minor, setting up kingdoms, setting up cities, right, and being pagan, right, worshiping other gods, right. There was, let me see, right, if we go, if you have not watched this presentation, right, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? If you have not watched this presentation, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? The Cornelius breakdown and the Acts 17 breakdown, right? Right. What I did was I broke up this presentation into some standalone videos. If you even go to videos, right, you got this one, right, hidden Jewish roots of Stoicism exposed, Epicureanism's influence on Hellenic Judaism, Acts 17 decoded Paul's message to Israelite Greeks, right? All of these three are literally all here in Acts 17, right? So let's go here real quick. Let me go. Judges. There's a source, right? Right. There's a lot that gets brought out here. So this source right here, Hellenistic civilization and the Jews, crazy source, right? Shows how we were all over the Greek world, right? But I even want to go even further, right? So you got Zeno of Chittim, right? Zeno of Chittim, right? He was born in 333 BC, right? And he's called a Jew, right? That source there. History of Cyprus, right? We go into this, right? That's where Zeno was born. Well, you had Jews that took Cyprus, not necessarily took it, but like literally was going to Cyprus for the production of bronze. Cyprus, the name Cyprus literally means copper. In order to make bronze, you need copper and tin. We were going as far as Cornwall, Great Britain, right? Bring this out in this book, right? Phoenician origins of Britons and Scots and the Anglo-Saxons, right? Where you literally got our people going to Cornwall, getting tin and bringing it to Israel with the copper to create bronze tools, right? Israel's Bronze Age tin from Britain. This is from Armstrong Institute of Biblical Archaeology, right? So we were all up in here, right? We were all up in these areas for centuries, right? So tons of sources in here, right? It's a lot. Right, boom, watch this. So according to the traditions, we find that Strabo, the Tarusian, immigrated from Crete into Troad, right? The Tarusians are also known as the Checkers, right? Again, if you tap in with the brothers of Rongadogabarium and the presentation that they just did on their channel about how we help influence and shape Greek culture in the Greek islands, the Checker were one of the sea peoples, right? And he's going into a ton of sources proving how those are Israelites, right? So we went from Crete, right? We went from Crete to Troas, which is in modern day Turkey, right? The city of Troy is in Turkey, right? Well, this is from Tacitus. The stories goes that the Jews were fugitives from the island of Crete. From the island of Crete, who settled upon the extreme borders of Africa at the time of Saturn was forcibly driven to the kingdom of Jupiter, right? Evidence of this story is considered in their name, the name of Idae, a tribe bordering the famous Mount Ida, which means Judah, in Crete, having been lengthened by a foreign corruption into Iudei. Some say their superabundant population of Egypt was discharged into the bordering countries in the reign of Isis under the leadership of Herodotus, which is Jerusalem, and Judas. Many assert that Jews were an Ethiopian race, meaning they were dark, right? Driven because Ethiopian means burnt face, driven out by fear or hatred to seek a new home in the reign of King Cepheus, right? This is actual history, guys, right? So I dive into all of this stuff here, right? Even when we look right here at the Greek lexicon, known as the BDAG, it says Hellenos, Greek, a man of Greek language and culture, right? In a broader sense, all persons who came under influence of Greek, i.e. pagan culture, right? But we were already pagans, right? Our people, I'm talking about, were already pagans in these lands, right? But yeah, like I said, you definitely got to tap in with the brothers of Rongadogabari, and that presentation is phenomenal, right? Like I said, I'm about halfway through, right? And the brother Panan, shout out to that good brother, brought some crazy sources, man. I'm telling you. All praise to the Most High, sis. Did Daniel mistakenly understand the 70 years prophecy of Jeremiah 25 and no. I don't believe, no. I wouldn't say so. Why? What would lead you to believe that? Daniel's a prophet in his own right. Let's just read it. It says, in the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of the years whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, and that he had accomplished 70 years in desolation, in the desolations of Jerusalem. I'm not sure why reading that makes you think that he misunderstood Jeremiah. Right? Because when we look here, Darius, right? Cyrus, right? Cyrus is who made the decree, and Darius is who allowed us to allowed us to go back and start building the temple, and it was under Artaxerxes where we were allowed to come back and rebuild the walls of the city, right? So there's two different things. So there's waves of what you got to understand when you're reading Jeremiah, right? Reading Daniel, reading Ezekiel, and all the history surrounding the Babylonians coming, right? There is waves of export, right? Of exile, right? First wave, you got Daniel. Daniel is a prince, right? He's of the royal family, right? Daniel is taken into Babylon during the first wave. There's a second wave where now Ezekiel gets caught up in that second wave, right? What happened was you started getting the kings and the princes, and then the upper class of Judean society getting exported out of Jerusalem, right? So you got Daniel during the first wave, and next you got Ezekiel, all right? And then the Babylonians come against us and besiege the city. Why? Because Zedekiah is the uncle of Jeconiah, right? He's the uncle of Jeconiah, right? And he's put on the throne by Nebuchadnezzar. His name gets changed. Nebuchadnezzar changes his name. He makes him to swear by Yahawah that he's going to serve him, right? He served for 14 years, if I'm not mistaken, and then he rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar and tried to click up with the Egyptians, and stopped paying tribute. And that's when Nebuchadnezzar said, I had enough. And he sent his army against us. They besieged the city. They cut off all supplies coming in. Can't come in, can't come out. It was an 18-month siege, right? People were literally dying in the streets, pining away. Women and women eating their children, all types of atrocities, right? And then the city fell and the temple got burnt. So that's a wave, right? Then we look at the repatriation. There's a wave of repatriation, right? So that's why. There's Hosea 14, 5-7 precept with tonight's present teaching. Let's take a look. So Hosea what? 14 and 5. Hosea 14 and 5. 5-7. Okay. Okay. So let's start verse 3. So, Asher shall not save us. We will not ride upon horses, neither will we say any more for the work of our hands. Ye are our gods, for in thee the fatherless findeth mercy. Excuse me. It says, I will heal their backsliding. I will love them freely. For my anger is turned away from him. I will be as the dew unto Israel. He shall grow as the lily and cast forth his roots as Lebanon. His branches shall spread, and his beauty shall be as the olive tree, and his smell as Lebanon. It's a good precept. Let me look at verse 1. So, O Israel, return unto the Lord thy God, for thou hast fallen by thine iniquity. Yeah, that's definitely a good precept. Verse 7 says, they that dwell under his shadow shall return. They shall revive as the corn and grow as a vine. The scent thereof shall be as the wine of Lebanon. Ephraim shall say, what have I to do any more with idols? I have heard him and observed him. I am like the green fir tree. From me is thy fruit found. Who is wise, and he shall understand these things, prudent, and he shall know them. For the ways of the Lord are right, and the just shall walk in them, but transgressors shall fall therein. So, to an extent, right, I would say this, it definitely ties in, right? I wouldn't say that Hosea 14 is fulfilled yet. Same way I wouldn't say Hosea 1 is fulfilled yet, right? But it definitely ties in. So, great precept. Great precept, brother. All praises. You said, no, you meant Jeremiah 29 and 10. Let's take a look. Jeremiah 29 and 10. Thus said the Lord, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word toward you, and causing you to return to this place. Yeah, we started returning after 70 years. Any other questions, family? Right? So the brother asks, can you break down the all Israel be saved a little more? I know 2/3 is destroyed in Babylon. So is that all that they will be brought back righteous in the kingdom? So first and foremost, the 2/3 destruction that we read about in the book of Zechariah is not talking about Babylon. I would say that more than 2/3 of Israelites in Babylon are going to be destroyed, right? The 2/3 has nothing to do with America, right? The 2/3 will be destroyed in the wilderness, right? So when we look at prophecy, you have children of Israel scattered to the four corners of the earth, right? You have a remnant being taken out of Babylon. You have the rest of our people, regardless of whether they keep the commandments or not, from all over the world getting brought to the wilderness that we see in Ezekiel chapter 20, right? According to Ezekiel chapter 20, the rebels will be purged out because just how there were rebels in the wilderness when we came out of Egypt, there's going to be rebels in the wilderness this second go around, coming out of modern day Egypt, right? Coming out of all the other lands of our captivities. The rebels will get put down. That's when the 2/3 get put down. The 2/3 happens in the land, right? So if you take a look in Zechariah, right? So in Zechariah 13, right? And it says, and it shall come to pass that in all the land, saith the Lord, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the 1/3 shall be left therein, right? If we go up, right, it says, and in that day there shall be a fountain open to the house of David and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem for sin and for uncleanness. And it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, that I will cut off the names of the idols out of the land. The land of what? The land of Israel. And they shall no more be remembered, and also I will cause the prophets and the unclean spirits to come to pass, spirits to pass out of the land. So the land of Israel. So the 2/3 getting cut off is in the land, right? Not in America, right? But going back to all Israel, right? So you have the rebels cut off, right? Rebels are cut out, right? Then you have the remnant of the children of Israel, right? That enter into the bond of the covenant, right? That enter into the land, right? And when we get into the land, we're going to start multiplying, right? And when we start multiplying, we're going to be producing children, right? We have to understand that there is this cycle in life called regeneration or reincarnation. It's the circle of life. So Israelites who are 2/3, right? Save anyone that is guilty of blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. They will be reborn through the loins of those that enter into the land, right? Even when we look at, for instance, Matthew chapter 5 and verse 18, 19, right? It says, verse 19, whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Breaking the commandments is what gets you put to death, right? When we look at John chapter 5, Christ talks about 2 resurrections: the resurrection unto life to them that have done good, to them that have kept the commandments, and the resurrection unto damnation to them that have done evil. Breaking the commandments is evil. Christ says if you break the least commandments and you teach men so, which is evil, you will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Meaning they're going to be in the kingdom of heaven. And when they're in the kingdom of heaven, we'll have salvation. Us being above all nations, right? Us not being in the hand of our enemies, right? Us being at rest, us being, having health and wealth, right? All of that is salvation, right? So good question, brother. So we got Esau in the chat, right? It says, do you believe that the white raiment that is in Revelation 3:18, the new covenant, which we are in now? So you're not going. So Mr. White Man, you are not in the new covenant. You're not in the old covenant. I'm not under the new covenant. I'm under the so-called old covenant. Right? The children of Israel are still under the current covenant, right? Which people called old. The new covenant will be enacted when the children of Israel are gathered, placed into the wilderness, go under the bond of the covenant and the laws of God written in their inward parts, where they will do the commandments. So-called Christian, someone who follows Christianity, does not keep the commandments of God, does not keep the Torah. The Torah is not written in your heart. The Torah is not written in my heart. I wish it was. I can't wait to the day where I don't have an ability to sin, to break God's laws, right? That's what we strive for. So you're asking about Revelation 3:18, right? Your question will edify the sheep. You're not a sheep. Revelation 3, it says, I counsel thee to buy of me gold tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich, and white raiment, that thou mayest be clothed, and that the shame of thy nakedness do not appear, and anoint thine eyes with eye salve, that thou mayest see, right? So what's the context of this passage that Mr. Speckled Bird has asked, right? Confusion of face, it has nothing to do with people looking like other nations. I don't know what you're talking about, right? Anyway, right? Let's look at the context. This is the message to Laodicea. And so the angel of the church of Laodiceans write, these things say the Amen, the faithful and the true witness, the beginning of the creation of God. I know that works, and that thou art neither cold nor hot. I would that yet thou wert cold or hot. So because thou art lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. Because thou sayest, I am rich and have increased with goods and have need of nothing, and knowest not that thou art wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. I counsel thee, I'm encouraging you to buy of me gold tried in the fire, right? Because this church, they're at ease, right? You need to get tried in the furnace, right? Talking specifically to this church at Laodicea, that thou mayest be rich, because the riches of this world mean nothing. Riches profit not in the day of wrath, right? So you have to be tried. This is in the white raiment. White raiment, white clothes is just a symbol of purity, right? To purify, to cleanse yourself, right? I'll give y'all an example, right? Let's go to the book of Isaiah 1. Right? Isaiah chapter 1, verse 16. But before I go there, let me go up to verse 1. It says, verse 2, it says, hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for the Lord has spoken. I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me. The ox knoweth his owner, and the ass his master's crib, but Israel have not known. My people do not consider, sinful nation, a people laden, covered in iniquity, a seed of evildoers, children that are corrupters. They have forsaken the Lord. They have provoked the Holy One of Israel unto anger. They are gone away backward, right? Why shouldst thou be stricken anymore? That will revolt even more and more. The whole head is sick and the whole heart is faint, right? So he's just rebuking Israel, right? Jumping down to verse we're down to verse 14. Your new moons and your appointed feasts, my soul hateth. They are a trouble unto me. I am weary to bear them. And when ye spread forth your hands, I will hide mine eyes from you. Yea, when ye make many prayers, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood. Wash you, make you clean, put away the evil of your doings from before my eyes. Cease to do evil. Learn to do well, seek judgment, relieve the oppressed, judge the fatherless, plead for the widow, right? So the same type of rebuke that the Most High God using Isaiah to rebuke Israel in their just wanton ways and them oppressing the helpless, oppressing the poor, right? Similar thing we see in Amos chapter 8, right? The Most High God is going to bring judgment on the people because the leaders, the rulers who are supposed to be judges, who the Bible calls Elohim, gods, right? Rulers, It's supposed to judge righteous judgment, right? It's supposed to relieve the oppressed, right? So to judge the fatherless, plead for the widow. They're not doing that, right? Similar mindset of the Church of Laodicea. They're rich. They got that, you know what I mean? They got that chicken, right? So now Christ is just rebuking them and encouraging them to actually be tried in the fire, right? That they may be rich, because the riches that they have ain't real riches, right? And white raiment that thou mayest be clothed, right? White just signifies purity, white clean raiment. That the shame of thy nakedness. Nakedness is likened unto sin. Do not appear and anoint thine eyes with eye salve, that thou mayest see. As many as I love, I rebuke and chasten. Be zealous, therefore, and repent. Right? Repent. The white raiment has nothing to do with the new covenant, because if they were under the new covenant, they would have no need to repent. Overcome 65. I don't know what you're talking about, right? With the original branch. I just explained the whole olive tree and the grafting in, right? The olive tree is Israel. According to prophecy, Jeremiah 11, some of the branches were broken off, right? Now think about this, right? An olive branch has what on it? Olives. Branch is broken off, right? The birds come, right? Jeremiah 12 says that my heritage is unto me like a speckled bird, right? The birds round about, meaning the other nations. God's heritage is Israel. The other nations are the other birds. They are against her, right? They come to devour, right? The branches get broken off, then the birds come, eat the fruit from the broken branches, fly away, scatter the seed of the fruit. The birds poop. The seed gets dispersed in other lands. It grows in the soil in these other lands and grows into what? Into other olives, other olive trees, right? And they become what? Wild olive trees. You really just, what you got to do is just go back and watch the presentation. Speckled bird. Christ shed blood for the remission of the sins of the children of Israel. Yes, he shed blood, right? He did. But no one's under the new covenant, because according to prophecy, the word of God, right? Isaiah 8:22, the law and to the testament, they speak not according to this word, is because there's no light in them, right? The testimony of Christ is the spirit of prophecy. So prophecy says that when the new covenant is enacted, the children of Israel will be gathered from all lands, brought to the wilderness, rebels get purged out, then they go under the bond of the covenant, right? Ezekiel 37 says that when Judah and Israel get brought back together, right, that they're going to appoint themselves one shepherd, one head, one king. It's going to rule over them. That's Christ. And God's going to make a perpetual covenant with them, a covenant of peace. That perpetual covenant of peace is the new covenant. According to the new covenant, everyone will have the laws. All the Israelites will have the laws of God in their inward parts, and they will do the commandments. There are Israelites today not doing the commandments. Okay? They're all going to be righteous. There are Israelites who are unrighteous. Therefore, no one's under the new covenant. Speckleberry, what's your father's ethnic background, sir? Right? Anyway, Tree of Life bears 12 manner of fruit each month. After 1 year of partaking of the Tree of Life, you have eaten 144 fruits. You have become overcomes you. You're bugging out, right? No, it's not. Specklebird. Specklebird, right? This is what I want you to do. I want you to take my email. Email me, right? Email me, Specklebird, right? And we can set up a new covenant debate / dialogue. How's that sound? How are you of the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, sir? Where's your family from? Right? Listen, this will make for good edification. Because again, I've been meaning to go into the new covenant and demonstrate how we are not in the new covenant. No, first and foremost, the new covenant is for the house of Israel and the house of Judah. No one is under the new covenant. Nobody. Right? Let's just go to the Bible. Jeremiah 31:31. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel, the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I brought them out of the took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break, although I was an husband unto them, saith the Lord. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. The fact that it went from house of Israel and house of Judah to now house of Israel shows what? Shows the reconciliation of who? The northern and southern kingdom. Ezekiel 37. Ezekiel 37. Right? It says, verse 24, and David my servant shall be king over them. This is Christ. And they all shall have one shepherd. They shall also walk in my judgments. Why will they be walking in God's judgments? Because the laws of God will be written in their inward parts. And observe my statutes and do them. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Jacob my servant. The Israelites are not dwelling in the land of Israel, wherein your fathers have dwelt, and they shall dwell therein, even they and their children and their children's children forever, and my servant David shall be prince forever. Moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them, and I will place them and multiply them and set my sanctuary in the midst of them evermore. The sanctuary of God is not here. The children of Israel, not in the land of Israel. My tabernacle also shall be with them. Yea, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And the heathen shall know that I am the Lord, that I, the Lord, do sanctify Israel, when my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forever. Right? So the covenant peace entails the keeping of the commandments, the doing, the performing, the practicing of the commandments. Jeremiah 31:31. After those days, saith the Lord, I will put my law in their inward parts and write them in their hearts. The Hebrew word for heart, la, means your mind. And I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Sounds like what we just read in Ezekiel 37. And they shall teach no man, every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, know the Lord. 1 John 2 and verse 3 says, hereby we know that we know God if we keep his commandments. He that saith I know God and keepeth not his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. In order for you to know God, you have to keep his commandments. And when this happens, I won't have to go and teach people to know God or keep God's commandments, because God's commandments will be written in their hearts and minds, right? It says, for they shall all know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. Simple. Very simple. Nicholas, King Chronicles, I'll have to dive more into that topic, brother. So, Specklebird, I asked you, what's your father's ethnic background? That's what I asked you, sir. What's your, stop saying yes, my blood line does go back to the seed of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. How? Show me how. What's your father's ethnic background? Like I said, Specklebird, right? Email me, right? And we can set up a dialogue about the new covenant, right? We can even set up a dialogue about who you are, who your fathers. Right? The scripture say, ask of your fathers, and they will tell you, right? Who are your peoples? Who are your forefathers? Who are your forefathers? And then the nigga had the nerve to say, I'm a confusion of face. Listen, this is not GMS. Confusion of face does not mean, oh, this Israelite looks like this nation. That's not what that means. Confusion of face means shame. Niggas is crazy. O Lord, to us belongeth confusion of face, to our kings, to our princes, and to our fathers, because we have sinned against thee. Right, let's look at the word confusion. Bashath. Shame. Shame. Right, let's look at another translation. Let's look at the ESV. To us, O Lord, belongs open shame. Imagine that. But anyway. Family, that's 3 hours right there, right? Again, I want to give all praises, all glory, and all honor to the Most High God, whose name is Yahawah. Of course, I do so in the name of His only begotten Son, Yahawashi, who the world intimately calls Jesus Christ. Make sure you brothers and sisters are subscribed. Right? Make sure you like and share the video. Right? Like and share the video. Okay. Make sure you subscribe. And make sure that you tap in with us again this Sunday, right? This Sunday at 8 p.m. Actually, let me go there real quick, right? This Sunday at 8 p.m., we will be diving into an important topic, right? So, Deuteronomy 16:5, right? So you got Israelites who are making excuses not to keep the Passover because of what they read in Deuteronomy 16:5, right? We will dive into what this actually means and how this does not apply to us and how we need to keep Passover, how we need to keep the commandments of God in order to get delivered, right? So we'll be diving into this, right? All praise to the Most High. This past year, right? We had House of Bread. We had our first Passover, right? As many of you guys know, we were members of a former group. Yeah, we got up on out of there, right? We got up on out of there because of gross iniquity and sin that was going on. And the Most High God made it so that we had an amazing Passover, right? We were able to secure a lamb of the first year on the 10th day, right? We were able to separate them. We were able to slaughter them at even on the 14th, drain the blood on the doorposts. Absolutely amazing, right? All praise to the Most High. So, this is a very important topic that we will be diving into this Sunday, right? Now, also watch, right, as we see a whole bunch of news going on with the U.S. and Iran, right? I'm thinking that they're going to attack this weekend. We shall see, right? That happens. We are in World War III, right? World War III has begun. You got Russia and China with doing joint naval live ammunition naval drills with Iran, right? Russia, right? The chief prince of Meshech, or the ruler of Moscow, according to biblical prophecies, is called to be a guard unto Persia, which is Iran, right? So Frank, this goofy Edomite Frank, who I smoked years ago, right? The three woes are the three world wars, right? The first and second war have already passed, and we're waiting for the third woe to crack open, right? So, see, look at this silly, look at this guy, silly. Listen, Specklebird, hit my email, and we can set up a dialogue, and you can get smoked. Anyway, again, family, make sure you guys tap in with us, right? Make sure you hit that notification about Sunday's lesson on should we keep Passover in America. Right, going into Deuteronomy 16. We'll also be going into our feast day calendar, right? Oh, before we leave, right? Again, you can get our feast day calendar. Right. Again, get your bust down tassels. Right. So if you go to House of Bread, right, go to House of Bread Camp, right? And you click on the link in our bio here on Instagram, right? There's 4 links, right? Our YouTube channels here, our Facebook. Here's this year's current calendar. This is this upcoming calendar. Now with the calendar, and we're going to dive into it in depth, right? We're going to dive into it in depth on Sunday, right? Here's our calendar, right? We always put, of course, the full year. So lock in. Right, we always put the full year, and then we put in the first month of the next year, right? So we will be keeping Passover on Tuesday, March 31st, right? This date lines up with the first day here, right? So this would be Tuesday, March 31st. Passover is from the evening of March 31st until April 1st, right? Feast of Unleavened Bread will start at evening on the 1st of April, which is Wednesday, right? So this is set up so it's very easy to understand, right? Talk about the Sabbath restrictions, very simple and easy, spelled out, right? And then noting that a day is even in the evening, or new moons, with the exception of the 7th new moon, is a Shabbat, right? And then all the yellow highlighted days are Shabbat one, i.e. special Sabbaths, which have all Sabbath restrictions except for cooking / kindling of fires. So again, here is our feast day calendar. You can get it right here on the House of Bread Instagram page, right? On Instagram, we're house_of_bread_camp, right? Here we are, and you can click the link and get our feast day calendar. You can download it. All praise to the Most High. Right. Anyway, with that, again, I want to give all praise, glory, and honor to the Most High God, whose name is Yahawah. Of course, I do so in the name of His only begotten Son, Yahawashi, Yahawah, the world, and we call Jesus Christ. Till next time, Shalawam, family, and Matawathya, ball.